just, they have these panels, and then they go and they go into hotel rooms, and they have like their own little chat services, and they have their own little meetings to discuss policy and to discuss the way the world needs to be. Like, the idea that doesn't send everyone having red flags when billionaires are having secret meetings with the director of the FBI is fucking insane to me.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Let me be clear. I'm like, this is actually like a difficult topic, which I think is what makes it interesting. I agree, right, that this is inherently classist. I agree that the idea of millionaires getting together on private jets in the highest mountain in whatever, I don't care what fucking Slavic nation this is. I really don't give a shit. Right? The point is,
Switzerland.
This is inherently
all Slavs.
Slavic
Europe.
nation.
Listen to me. Europe, it can be categorized as two groups: Australians and Slavs. There's really no other way to look at it. Everything else is noise. But
the World Economic Forum is currently meeting in Davos. That might be wrong. It might be over. I'm not sure. But currently meeting in Davos, Switzerland. It is a highly influential meeting of billionaires and politicians. Typically, at the WEF, billionaires get a chance to opine about the issues of the day during heavily reported panels. Their opinions of the world are then given merit and weight in article after article in publications around the world. Simultaneously, guests of the WEF are making deals with each other that have far-reaching global effects. Are gatherings like the WEF useful? Should the opinions of the mega-rich hold any more sway in the public's mind than any other? Has their success earned the attention and proved their merit? Or is this another way in which the rich leverage their status for unearned attention and further money-making? Okay, this is a topic we didn't get to last week. For
Boys,
I can't remember why.
Why didn't no one tell me my audio was jacked? Let me know.
Yeah, so Davos either is happening or did happen. I actually don't know. But it is very influential meeting. You guys, a lot of money, a lot of capital there, capital being exchanged, and deals that are being made.
And Idris Elba.
And Idris Elba, was he there too? I didn't know. So influential people end up here, and their influence is kind of magnified by the attention that we give them. Is that warranted? And is this, maybe a problem for like democracies, economies? Like, what are your thoughts on these things? So let's go to Lactoid.
Yeah, so I have no issue with important, successful people meeting with each other to theorize and problem solve, or even to legitimately, within the confines of legitimate discourse, support their own business interests and work with each other to achieve those ends. But personally, I don't care for people self-bloviating. I find it to be, I have the same issue with the World Economic Forum as I do with the Emmys or the Oscars, which is oftentimes it's just simply a soapbox to preach. I think it's really annoying pretty quickly. So it's not something that I find a lot of interest in. I don't find a lot of wisdom in the things that are said there often. Sometimes there are. Ultimately, I don't see a huge issue with the concept, as long as the opinions they're putting forward are interesting and in line with my own. Specifically how it's set up, though, it's funded by governments, which I'm surprised. I think that's a major problem. There's no reason why the government should be funding a bunch of rich people to get together and blab. Seems kind of like a ridiculous thing. And there are some concerns that the WEF represents the levers of world power, and they're conspiring to hold on to that power by rigging the system into their favor. I'm not sure how much the truth there is to that, but to the extent that the World Economic Forum is doing this, we should be skeptical. I just don't know how to limit it, right? When you have powerful people that get together, they tend to do this, but I don't really want to stop powerful people from just having the right to get together. That seems kind of excessive. So,
thank you so much, Scott.
I'm surprised you went so soft on Davos and the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is a serious threat to humanity, likely one of the biggest threats to humanity that has ever existed. What you have is a large global class of billionaires and corporate interests working together with state actors to engage in regulatory capture in order to fit these billionaires' agenda and create and control your government's policies against you. I mean, just yesterday, you had an EU commissioner hanging out at Davos, being interviewed, talking about how, Elon Musk is a problem because he doesn't censor Twitter like Twitter used to censor, and that they will in fact sanction him if he doesn't fall in line, things of that nature. You have Klaus Schwab, right, who uses the Young Global Leaders Initiative to specifically find people that he believes will be in positions of power in the future in governments, and he calls it, quote, penetrating the cabinet. So that they can force their agenda into nation states. For an example of some people that are currently in our government that have been identified and given special privileges and opportunities and access by the World Economic Forum, we can look at Dan Crenshaw, Pete Buttigieg, Seth Moulton, congressman from Massachusetts, Ivanka Trump, Tom Cotton, and Tulsi Gabbard. These are just people that are currently young global leaders that are currently in our government. That are working with the World Economic Forum to achieve their globalist vision as they try and, destroy farms in the Netherlands and starve millions of people to death so that they can meet, economic goals, and so that they can have their sustainable development goals, so that they can destroy private education as a freedom and, move critical theory and critical pedagogy into schools across the world so that they can engage in all kinds of evil initiatives. I have no problem with billionaires getting together and meeting. It's funny because in the 1990s, when Alex Jones was talking about Davos, and when Jesse Ventura was talking about Davos, everyone said they were conspiracy theorists and that this was a lie and that Davos doesn't exist. And now we're willing to admit it because we've normalized corporations and state actors working together to sell their own people out for what the large wealthy elite want and how they want to control the world. So stakeholder capitalism, ESG, climate Malthusian death cultist behavior, all of them can go fuck themselves. The amount of restitution that needs to be paid for many of their crimes is far more than their own life.
Oh, okay. I'm having my own existential crisis here. Look at me, agreeing with Scott. Oh, the world's falling apart. I had to get myself together here. Now, while I do so, we'll let Alu go, please.
I don't think it's quote unquote an existential threat. It's kind of just corporates and aristocrats doing what they do. It's peak corporate behavior. It's in-group preference. Have any of you heard of TopLink?
Just get your opening statement.
TopLink. I was going to ask because TopLink is their messaging service. So I was looking up earlier how you get into the Davos Institute. First off, you're selected. Second off, upon selection, and it costs around $600,000. That's the range, annual fees. But in order to be selected, one of the things that you get out of that is you get access to TopLink, which is a virtual software similar to Discord or Clubhouse, where you have access to that 24/7, 365 days a year, right? So what we're actually talking about is a meeting, but it's only part of the entity, right? What you're actually getting out of being a part of Davos is access to an in-group. This is just aristocracy. As far as whether they're doing something like valuable, people who are productive do productive things and get together with other productive people. This is class behavior, right? I guess I'm not really sure what the question is, right? If you're asking me if I think that they're doing good things, they're doing some good things. Are they doing some bad things? Yes, they're doing some bad things. Is this aristocracy and class preference? And are they gatekeeping knowledge and decision making and policy? Absolutely, they are aristocratic as fuck. So it depends on what lens you're looking at this in. But Davos Institute, it's peak corporate behavior. It's
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh, and Ali, just be aware that your mic is sensitive enough that we can hear when you sigh or when you're puff out or anything like that. So consider muting
I got you.
yourself.
Let me put on sound suppression.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Let's go to Ty.
Yeah, so there's about 3 small layers that I'll give here. The first and foremost is that most of this is self-aggrandizement. I'm largely with that. And most of this is largely just comes down to, there's leaders and rich people to get together, but ironically enough, this is more of just a thing for the staffers and just getting together and having a giant party. I wish this was half as prestigious as a lot of the people made it out to be, because it's really not. The other part is most of the people who are attending this particular event, I hate them like vehemently, because I've talked to them. These are the kind of folks that's like, there's nothing wrong with the economy. Look at the airports, they're full when you're eating 10% inflation. That's their general way of thinking and acting, and so don't trust them even if you met them. The long story short here is that if you watched any of Davos this year, basically is that this is just a wonderful example of how absolutely out of touch our leadership is and these big decision makers are, because they're basically just bitching at how the Russians ruined everything for them over the last year. And the reality is that they should have saw this coming a mile away, but they didn't. And now they're paying the consequences for it. So as far as I can say it, or as far as I am concerned, they can pound sand, and I'll leave with that.
Thank you so much.
Pound sand, young man.
All right, so to me, the discourse on the World Economic Forum is part of the larger debate on globalization. This is something that I studied heavily in school, and from all the classes that I did take, I come away with mixed feelings. Because over the past few decades of globalization, we've seen the number of people living in poverty fallen. We've seen a dramatic increase in literacy, a dramatic reduction in hunger, more people have sustainable energy. Globalization has done a lot of good, but it's also done a lot of bad, because we are also seeing that a lot of these gains are going to the developed countries, the countries that really don't need to be any more richer if we're actually thinking about improving the lives of people around the world. But in the end, my position is that while recognizing the many valid critiques of globalization, globalization is here to stay. And the same goes for the World Economic Forum. I think it's useful because it brings together many groups of people for much needed discussions. I think global issues require global solutions. And it should also be noted that not only do corporate elites and politicians gather, but also non-governmental organizations working in development and academics who can better inform our global decision makers. And finally, I think the center of the WEF discourse shouldn't be zero-sum questions of like pitting regular folk versus elites, but rather how can we make globalization beneficial in an equitable way? Because I think a lot of people do forget about the fact that a lot of the benefits of globalization only happen when everybody starts benefiting. Because if you have like all of a sudden every single country starts becoming trade protectionist and isolationist, then all of a sudden globalization is dead. So these rich people, these corporate elites, are also thinking about how can we best sell globalization to everybody so that then they can think, hey, this is actually good for me as well.
All of a sudden, globalization is dead. Don't threaten me for a good time. All right, let's go to our friend Corey.
Fucking right.
I'll keep it short again for obvious reasons. Because I don't have actually, I pretty much echo a lot of the sentiments that have been shared already. And I definitely agree with Lactoid in that award ceremonies like the Emmys and the Golden Globes, really stupid. And so yeah, the World Economic Forum seems like pretty much like just like everyone else echoed, just like a wealthy circle jerk, just a big party. I don't think it doesn't appear to be all that useful. Not to mention the environmental impact of like their meetings and their gatherings. And would I, let's say, ban this type of gathering? No, obviously not. I just don't see the utility. But I agree that it shouldn't be funded by governments and it shouldn't be tax exempt. And I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, and finally, our friend Dark Lightsaber Doobie.
I think that I really don't understand the hate that the WF got. I think that this organization, right, this meeting, brings. I'm sorry, what?
So that's because you're the bourgeois, doobie.
I think aristocracy is fine in some cases, but I can give you an argument for that too if you guys want it. But I think that the WF, it's an organization that really what it does is it brings together some of the brightest, most influential leaders from around the world, and provides them with a platform to share their experiences, talk about things that are actually affecting these various sectors that they're dominating right now. Their programs like the Young Global Leader initiative, right? They identify people who are like what's the word I'm looking for? Who can be like role models, right, for like the next generation. to help people along the path towards sustainability, to shaping the future of the world in a way that is beneficial for everybody. And it's true that yes, sometimes some of them have some goofy ideas. Sure, okay. I think when you get a lot of people who are like billionaires or multimillionaires together, you're gonna end up. And some of these people have been that way their entire lives. They are an aristocracy in a lot of ways. I think that some of these people are going to be very disconnected from the common person, and they're going to say some goofy shit. Sure. But I think that
go ahead. Sorry.
But I think that like dismissing the entire group as like some like death cult or something is really throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think the reality is that the WF has put forward like many initiatives that have led to like real substantial change for the better all across the planet. And I think and someone mentioned like them like saying that, oh well, we need to bring like Elon Musk in line, or he's a problem. Well, yeah, if you're a person who wants less hate speech, less racism, less Nazism, less fascism, somebody allowing these people to run rampant on a massive platform where they have access to millions and millions of young minds that they can indoctrinate, that's a fucking problem. So yeah, it can seem like scary in the short term that they're saying these things so directly, but I think in some ways you need them to say it directly. I think this is why they're leaders in their industries, because they can say these things directly, and I think that's important.
So before we begin, just reminding everyone, the reason my camera's out is because I'm having a camera issue. But it is me, Prime, in the center. So if you hear my voice, that's who that is. So we'll get started. Opening up. Al, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I wanted to clarify something. I keep hearing like they're funded by the government. There may be some amount where their funding does come from the government, but that does a disservice to the funding that they do get. Again, to be
does a disservice? Is it like, are we disrespecting
in
them?
Terms? Well, no,
poor billionaires.
No, trust me, not my take. My point is that it doesn't capture the full image of what Davos invests, right? So, in order to be a member of Davos, in order to be like fully there and have access to the things that you get when you are a member of Davos, it is $600,000 a year, right? Let's be clear about this. Their funding is not limited to government entities. Governments may find value, and I don't even necessarily think that's bad. Again, I like kind of agree with Doobie when he says I think I was joking earlier when I said bourgeois, because like I want competent people in competent positions, and there are plenty of people in Davos who are literally just virtue signaling. They're gonna head there on a fucking jet, and then commit some human rights abuses on the way, right? It's noise. There are also people who are incredibly intelligent and actually do have solutions. So it's a mixed bag. At the end of the day, I don't think that there's a reason necessarily for governments to be averse to funding it. The question is what they're funding more net positive than net negative? And I'm not convinced either way on this. I don't like what they're doing in India. I don't like what they're doing in certain mechanisms. But like, at the end of the day, this is what I expect of aristocratic-minded people. This is exactly what I expect groups to collaborate.
I'm kind of confused, right? It feels very much like the narcissist's prayer, right? Like it's not happening, and if it is, it's not that big of a deal, and if it is big of a deal, it's your fault. You know, it's not my fault. Like this kind of continuation, right? If I were to ask people, hey, so the FBI director Christopher Wray, along with other representatives from different governments around the world, as long like in the EU, is getting together with large billionaires in secret meetings. Except the meetings are no longer secret. Just they have these panels, and then they go into hotel rooms, and they have like their own little chat services, and they have their own little meetings to discuss policy and to discuss the way the world needs to be. Like the idea that doesn't send everyone having red flags when billionaires are having secret meetings with the director of the FBI is fucking insane to me.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Let me be clear. I'm like, this is actually like a difficult topic, which I think is what makes it interesting. I agree, right, that this is inherently classist. I agree that the idea of millionaires getting together on private jets in the highest mountain in whatever. I don't care what fucking Slavic nation this is. I really don't give a shit. Right? The point is,
Switzerland.
this is
Switzerland is
inherently
Look at all Slavs.
Starts with an
Hey,
S. Slavic nation
Europe.
of
Listen to
Switzerland.
me.
Starts with an S.
Europe. It can be categorized as two groups: Australians and Slavs. There's really no other way to look at it. Everything else is noise. But I don't care like about all that. I agree. That's just class collaboration. That's what the rich. That's my point, right? This is the rich doing what they do at the end of the day. As far as value gotten out of that, I don't really think that there's any like. Let me rephrase. I agree that it is classist. I agree that it is insulting. I agree that it's strengthening the inherently like the divide between the lower class and the upper class and the middle class. I agree with all of that. I also see the value of intelligent people discussing with intelligent people. Would I prefer that this happens in an open environment? Yes. Would I prefer an internet that isn't like completely antithetical to discourse? Yes. Would I prefer that there be some form of ethical economics? Yes. But what we have is what we have. So
Okay,
unless
let me rephrase this, right?
Okay.
So look, I have no problem with billionaires getting together and bloviating, or even working in secret meetings with other billionaires in an in-group preference to make their businesses shape in whatever decision they want to do, right? My issue is when you have state actors that ostensibly, right, and I big fucking air quotes here, right, work by the will of the people, going into secret rooms with these billionaires that are also openly now talking about how effective they hope their behavioral nudging units work, right? How we can try and convince people to accept these things, and purchasing with regulatory capture and secret meetings and secret access these people that are presumptively like they work for us, right? And I think Davos is a great example that these state actors don't work for you. They're your fucking rulers, and they're up for purchase by these very billionaires that I call death cultists. And the reason I call them death cultists is because many of them are pushing environmental policies that are absolutely destructive towards the food, the price of food, supply chains, etc., because this is whatever ideological fucking bent that they have that they want to push onto governments to impose on you and put pressure on, let's say, I don't know, the farmers in the Netherlands that have some of the lowest nitrogen runoff of any farmers in the world and are a breadbasket for Europe, but we got to make sure we're for the environment, right? Like, get the state actors out, and if the state actors are going to be there, it all needs to be fucking public. Without that, this is fucking evil. This is billionaires buying your governments.
But my issue isn't with anything that you're saying. Like you're saying legitimate shit, right? Like there is an issue with the aristocracy here. There is an issue with like it's fucking insulting, right? I agree. I think you can walk and talk at the same time, though. We can extract the benefit from these millionaires that we can get, while also at the same time working on the grassroots level, and then also on the higher leverage level of electoral politics and higher up entities, right?
Maybe you just have more faith in these politicians. And
it comes down to a question of reformist versus acceleration.
If the meetings between, so I actually really agree. I think all meetings with state actors should be public. If there was no more, like if the millionaires and billionaires, they could have their own little secret meetings, but whenever there was a state actor there, those meetings had to be public, like on a public forum, broadcasted to the internet. Like there's no more secret meetings between the government and corporations. If that was like the rule they established, if that was the rule they established, would you have like any issues with that, Scott? I mean, I think that solves the issue, wouldn't it?
What happens if it breaches national security?
I feel like that would probably like, they would just have the secret meetings anyways, banned or not, right? Like, I don't trust fucking
on a
state
show.
actors being a part of like a fucking giant meeting with billionaires and NGOs, right? Like, this is like the issue is the state shouldn't be involved at all. If the state wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form, and these institutions weren't like selecting young global leaders to then quote unquote penetrate the cabinet so that the state could be influenced by the billionaires' needs, such as, I repeat, Dan Crenshaw, Pete Buttigieg, Seth Moulton, Ivanka Trump, Tom Cotton, and Tulsi Gabbard, right? If these people weren't on the fucking payroll and or, access of these billionaires, you know what I mean? It might be a different thing. The problem is the existence of the state. Like,
Right,
if the billionaires were getting together,
What
Scott,
confuses me-
can
it would
you
be
at
better.
least
What confuses
understand?
me, Scott, is why you expect anything different. That's what really confuses. Because I expect this, right? I expect people like people like Ivanka Trump or any of these people that you mentioned to behave
Right.
in this manner. What confuses me is why you don't think that the system that we have doesn't incentivize this. It's the
I'm a
byproduct
libertarian.
of
No,
I
he
do
probably
think
does.
that we
He's just
do.
complaining about the existence of the
Incentivizes it.
state. But but
But how do
Scott,
you? So my issue is, how do you solve for Davos without solving for the inefficiencies in the system that created Davos? Davos is a symptom of
Agreed.
aristocracy.
Okay, every single solution that Scott
I
has
don't know
is
about
eliminate the
aristocracy,
state.
but-
Okay, literally, like every single topic that is on this panel throughout history, Scott's solution
true.
is like 90% of the time it's like, let's eliminate the state. But my question to you, Scott, is like, can you at least understand that with how the world works, like aside from your critiques of the state and how appalling it is to you that it does exist and intervenes and stuff, with the current state of the world, don't you see it important for politicians to actually be in the same room as these corporate elites?
No, I think the best thing we could do is decouple from this as much as possible. Defang and
But then, like,
and
wouldn't-
destroy
but-
the state to its
But
greatest degree
you said
that we
something
are
interesting,
capable
right?
of.
But you said something interesting that like one of your fears is that these corporate elites are engaging in regulatory capture.
Mhm.
Isn't it possible, as an unintended consequence to your prescription, that once the state no longer is a part of the World Economic Forum, that all of a sudden the companies could be like, hey, the government's not going to get involved. They're not going to be like, dealing in or bad shit. Let's actually do as much harm as we can for as much insane profit as we can.
No, that's stupid.
Why not?
Because it's just like
Because
Okay,
there's
okay,
no-
come on, that's
there-
not
They already
Said.
do that on
Alright,
Facebook
alright.
Messenger. They don't need to go to a forum to do that.
No, I mean, there's the point is
It's
that
not
there is
beneficial
no
to them
economic
to do as
forum.
much harm as possible. Like that doesn't.
The entire
wasn't
reason-
The
financially
point,
incentivized
but
to do
the,
that.
the
Evil
reality is that
Incorporated.
governments actually do intervene and regulate these companies and their bad practices. That actually does happen.
If the World Economic Forum cannot in
Go ahead
some
and
way
give me an
act-
example where
Well,
the
just-
state has stepped in and done a great job of regulating
Corey, I see your
corporations.
hand up.
if the World Economic Forum
Time.
is the incentive to it is access. If the World Economic Forum is not integrated in some way with the state, what is the purpose of me, John Joe, CEO of big fuck company, being there? To some degree, we have to acknowledge that the incentive to be a part of this conversation at Davos is the fact that it has integration in the large. They're min-maxing. You have state.
Yes,
you have
I
corporate,
agree.
you
That's
have-
the fucking problem, right? If Davos was a collection of just corporations and NGOs that weren't affiliated and not getting state funding, right? And they came together and said, hey, we have common goals and we want to figure out how to use those common goals, then what you would have is a meeting of some of the most successful people, right? Coming together to solve problems as they
Wait,
see
okay.
fit.
But
And
my
if it
problem
works
is
out
that
for
the
'em, that's
common
great.
goal of the
even more- that would be
corporations
even
aren't
more
the
of a
same
threat,
common
in
goals
my
of the
opinion.
people.
That
My
would be
Why would you
problem-
assume that?
My
though?
problem is
the
that
state has
my pro-
an explicit interest in keeping people safe. It's the only entity that does, right? The corporations don't. Their incentive is towards their profit shareholders, right? The state has a legal
Which is people.
need to protect the people. So them being a part of this process, there being this exchange of leverage between the state and Davos, in my mind, makes this less dangerous, because what you have otherwise is an in-group of billionaires and aristocrats who have no one to be beholden to and can act
the exact
unified
opposite.
in solidarity. I disagree
It's the
with
exact
that completely.
opposite. The
Why do
state
you believe that?
is less beholden than corporations because corporations are beholden
What?
to profit. Profit is a far better mechanism to hold someone to than elections. Elections are just how can we sway 51% of people to agree to us, right? Like the market is a far better mechanism for punishment and reward and actually benefiting people. How do you make money? You solve problems. That's
We're
how
so
you
far
make money
apart.
under capitalism.
Yeah,
is by
We're
solving
You can
problems.
also make
Why-
money by
so far
causing
we could argue
problems.
for hours.
Cigarettes.
Sorry, we got to let some other people who have been waiting. Corey and then Tiberius.
Yeah,
Doobie,
just
because he wanted to say something too.
I just wanted to engage with Doobie and Jay Chow for a minute. I guess like just one question to Doobie. So like, I assume you're more in favor of, let's say, the World Economic Forum, is because like from what I understand, like you're more or less like okay with like a technocracy or technocracy. Would that be like accurate?
Sure, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I think what's happening is you have some of the most successful people on the planet who have like the ability to make real change, to like move resources to make real change in the planet, working with an organization that has a responsibility to better the lives of its citizens. Right. So if you have these two groups of people working together, and I don't know why we're assuming that billionaires are just like evil monsters and all they care about is money. If they give a fuck about hate speech, that isn't monetary. I think there's another thing driving that, which is they'd like to shift the culture in a direction that they prefer, and that cultural shift I think is something that most Americans would agree with. So. To answer your question, I don't. I think a little sort of. I'm okay. I'm more okay with technocracy, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I just feel like you guys were framing all of this, which seems to be a group of people that get together to figure out how to make the world better, right? But you're looking at it like, oh God, I'm not invited to the meeting. I'm not a young global leader, so they must be fucking like drinking pig blood in the corners or something. Like it's ridiculous, right? They're pretty public about what they do. They're pretty public about what the initiatives they're pushing, and a lot of them are very, very good.
People work in their own self-interest, right? And when you have someone that is working for profit without the involvement of the state, then what they're doing is they're dependent upon making a profit, which means they need to solve problems in some capacity for people to find value in what it is that they do. That is fine. But when you have governments that have the capacity to impose restrictions, regulations, rules, etc., onto other people, all of a sudden you have deeply corrupted what that entire thing is. Your assumption is the state and governments care about their people, and the billionaires, well, they just seem to care about people too, and these are two institutions of power coming together to help people. But the fact of the matter is that the incentive is completely rotted once you have wealthy people that can convince one person or one group that is much smaller to impose restrictions, regulations, and things that can directly benefit them, the billionaire.
But that one person that convincing is somebody who's in their position because they've been either elected or appointed to represent.
Shut up, just Doobie, please go.
Sure. So that one person that they're going to be convincing, right, is going to be somebody who is either elected or appointed to represent the interests of the whatever like a nation, right, whether it's the United States, Canada, whatever the fuck. Right, so to just say, oh, well, they're convincing one person, that person is definitely corrupt, and the entire thing is like shady and underhanded, is ridiculous, right? This person is appointed to specifically look after this set of interests, which is the interests of the people, right? And it makes a lot more sense for that billionaire or group of billionaires who have the ability to like actually make the shit happen, to actually shift the culture, to pull the levers of power, and whether it's like on Twitter or YouTube or Google or whatever the fuck, make TOS policy changes that massively shift the way that people in our society speak to each other, right, on the internet and in real life, right? So these people are definitely the people that our government should be speaking to, because they have the power to make the changes in their fucking office. They say, hey, peon, make that a slur on our website, and then suddenly you can't say that word anywhere on the internet, and that slur vanishes from the vocabulary over time. This is hold on. So to assume, I think what you're assuming is that there's like people operate it based on their own self-interest, sure, but not all of that self-interest is going to be monetary. It's not always what makes them the most money. Some of these people do, like, this can sound crazy, do have ideological beliefs, wishes for the future, cultural perspectives that they'd like to enforce, right? So if we can,
Yes.
they can work together to figure out how,
Yes.
work together with each other, with a group of people that have
New
other
point.
ideological
Hold on,
beliefs
new point.
and
He
cultural
can't contain
perspectives,
himself.
et cetera, et cetera. If they can work with those people and the people who are meant to represent us in our interests to find a middle ground that makes sense for everybody, helps everybody, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Do you have
basically,
any idea how
self-interest
batshit
isn't
insane it is to believe that secret meetings
sum.
with government politicians?
What's wrong with them
is
being
total-
secret? Why should they be out in the open?
All right.
Private meetings are totally valid. What's the issue with private meetings?
Doobie,
Doobie,
I jump
You
back
see a
in there.
private meeting and
they
suddenly
must be
it's like
doing
shady.
something
No,
right.
private
Doobie,
meetings make a lot
shut
of
the
sense.
fuck up. You made like 17 fucking points about how wonderful and benevolent our fucking politicians are, and they can totally be trusted
Dude, all
to
you've
get
been
with the
saying is how
billionaires to
terrible
work
they are.
together.
I don't
to
see how that's
Can you just
enforce
explain
things
why
that
a meeting being
people
private makes
themselves
it like shady
don't
somehow?
want to do.
Do you never have private
You have-
meetings?
Shut the fuck up! You have billionaires working with politicians in secret
Billionaires
meetings,
exist.
trying to come up
Politicians
with
exist.
ways. Trying to come up with ways
Oh, they talk.
to get to use the power of the state and their money to nudge and change things that people themselves don't want to do. And you say that this is much to do about nothing
you're so
because
oppressed.
they represent our interests.
Can
Do
you
have any
explain
idea
why
how
they might
fucking
be?
retarded
Can
that
you
is?
explain
Your
why they
life
might
is
want to come down on
crumbling.
Elon Musk for long hate speech on Twitter? What monetary interest of theirs does that serve?
First of all, that's an EU commission.
Can I jump in
Okay,
here?
again,
No,
what
no,
monetary
no,
interest
no.
is that? What corporate interest does the WF have in saying, "Hey, Elon Musk is a problem because he's allowing fucking Nazis on his platform"?
What could possibly be what could corporations benefit from being able to control language and speech online and institute policies that are vague about what can and can't be said? Oh, I don't know, maybe fucking Pfizer and every bit of fucking censorship that
Pfizer.
ever existed over YouTube, Twitter,
You got
Facebook,
from Nazis to
etc.
Pfizer.
No,
Okay,
you
again, because
brought
what they're
up
talking about
Nazis,
specifically is
motherfucker.
him allowing a full-out racism,
No,
Nazism,
you're
hold on,
interjecting
transphobia,
one, pivoting off to the
homophobia,
side, and not paying attention. I give you a
hold on.
great fucking answer.
insane shit on a platform full of kids that are going to see this shit.
You're lying.
And I know that you
Leon,
believe the
Leon,
groomer
Leon,
narrative.
say this.
I know that you believe the
Stop,
groomer
stop,
narrative
this is
about trans
amazing.
people. What's up?
Hey, okay, all right. Corey, Doobie, don't worry. I got your. I see you're at the tie any which way. Corey, you instigated this. This is all your fault.
Ask the question.
But you also want to talk to Jay Chow. So if you have anything to ask him,
Yeah,
go
oh, I
ahead,
was
and then we gotta
recognized.
go to Ty.
Oh,
Yeah.
yo, what happened to Ulu?
Hopefully,
I'll be
just,
right back. My
quick
cam
question,
just my phone died.
to Jay Chow, where just to like clarify, let's say your position, or to understand where you're coming from better. Where like you earlier you framed it like when you're engaging with Scott of like I think if I remember correctly, like you sort of framed it as like it might be a good thing if these global elites have these conversations with politicians because it might lead to some sort of like regulation. So like my follow-up question is like. Are you in favor of, let's say, corporate lobbying, let's say in U.S. politics? And if the answer is no, then I would say, like, how is that different here in this case?
Corporate lobbying in global politics?
No, in like United States politics, in terms of like I think it's fair to say like lobbying happens, and you have like lobbyists that they.
Yeah, I'm not anti-lobbying.
Okay,
I don't
so
think the issue is lobbying here. I think the issue, at least with a lot of these arguments that I'm hearing from the other side, is that they assume that once billionaires are in a room with other billionaires and with other people with power, then there must be like some grand conspiracy of evil doing that is rotting the world. But at least like within my opening statement, I'll reiterate that when you're looking at the actual outcomes and effects of globalization for the past couple of decades, creating a more global economy has had many, many benefits, material benefits to billions of people across education, social well-being,
No
life
one's against that here.
expectancy, poverty, hunger, like
No one has
hunger's
argued
decreasing.
against
That's
that.
not getting better.
I just want to because like
Based on
you
misinformation.
I think you like at least I want to clarify because you said you're not against lobby. As in,
How is
like,
this
so,
useless information? If you guys are
so-
like postulating
Oh,
that like all the
Facebook
bad things are going to be
misinformation.
happening, all
No,
that like all the
you're
bad things are
arguing
happening
against a
because
straw
of
man.
this
Nobody-
Davos, but like that's just contrary to the actual evidence of what has been happening for the
J-Chow.
past couple of decades.
J-Chow, what you are talking about is something that no one on this entire panel has argued. Right? No one has said that like a more global economy is going to destroy us all. And set aside all
You
the
said it was an
conspiracy
existential threat. What?
No, I didn't. You just don't know how to
Yes,
listen.
you did. Wait, hold on, hold on.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
no, I
am I bugging here? Am I bugging here?
J-Chow, nobody said globalism or corporations working within multiple different nation states is somehow the problem.
What do you think
here.
the WEF
What I am talking
is?
What J-Chow, try and listen. Try and keep up. You talk about, well, it's only the conspiracy. I'll set aside every fucking conspiratorial thing and only talk about the things they openly talk about, which is
they
trying
talked about the
to
war in
convi-
Ukraine.
which
They've
is-
talked about the
J-Chow,
economy. They talked
shut
about
up.
the
You gotta let
future
him
of
respond.
globalization.
Stop.
You gotta let him respond.
Scott, I don't
Stop.
think you realize that I
Whoa,
actually
whoa, whoa,
don't care
hey!
about most things that you say.
I know that you don't care. I understand
Because
that, right?
all
But it would
at the end of the
behoove
day
you
is
to
it's
care.
just gonna go back to the
Okay.
state.
Hold on,
We got it.
hold on.
If
Okay.
he's wrong, he's wrong.
very-
You gotta like
This
let
is
him
very-
talk
this
in order
is very
to
simple.
suss it
This
out.
is very simple. Scott was when he said like existential threat, he was talking about the WEF and the politicians working with the billionaires, right? The state working with
Yes.
the private sector, and that were in secret. He wasn't talking about globalization. Period. Right?
I'm not Alex Jones going, the goddamn
except
globalists
from
and
my
China.
opening
WEF
statement,
is a
to me,
representation
the
of
discourse
globalization,
on
but it's not the same as that.
Okay, so
it's close
when
enough.
you
Come on.
listen, when you have world leaders, presumably, I don't.
You will say the same thing about the IMF, wouldn't you?
Jay
You'll say
Chow,
the same thing
shut
about the
the
World Bank,
fuck
wouldn't
up.
you?
Guys,
Shut up,
Jay-Chow,
Jay
you
Chow.
gotta-
You
you
are
gotta
doing
let me talk.
everything you can to interrupt me because you know I'm better at this than you. So stop talking.
Really?
What
Because
we're-
usually whenever
Hey,
you're
hey,
talking,
hey,
you're
hey,
just going into a rant.
Yo, Jay Chow,
Listen.
knock it off. Let him respond.
What I am
and then
talking-
we gotta start to move on. Go ahead.
Like, what I am talking about, right? We can set aside the secret meetings. We can just talk about the shit they openly talk about. When you have billionaires saying that they want to work with governments for climate action, right? And they say that overpopulation is a problem and that carbon emissions are a problem, but that people and individuals won't take action. So we need to use our money and influence to try and capture the state and make different nation states all come together on climate action now, right? That's a fucking problem. That is against people's will. That is against individual actors, and instead imposing what billionaires want to try and capture institutions that have the power to impose shit on people. And this idea that like, oh, but 51% might still support them is not a fucking response of this idea that it's not a corrupt incentive structure, setting aside the secret meetings.
Can I ask you a question?
Okay, no. Sorry. We got Ty has been waiting so patiently. Shout out to my man Ty.
Shut up.
Doobie needs to go there.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and like I'm about to have a stroke here, so I'm gonna largely take more the side of Jay Chow and Doobie, but for a little bit of different reasons. 9 times out of 10, I want leaders and people to congregate, and for anyone who's just like, oh, well, the rich people are getting together, why aren't you doing the same? Why are you not getting together with your community to work in your own interests? This is the thing that I get fucking pissed off with the average person and voter with, is that they get pissed off the rich people for doing it when that's the way the system's supposed to work. You're supposed to work with your neighbors, your coworkers, and all these other people that are part of your society to make it work for you. And the biggest reason that it probably isn't working for you straight out of the gate is because you're probably not playing the game anymore. Because most people aren't. Second part. While I have serious concerns with the WEF and most of these major economic institutions, is that I don't have a problem with the people who run them in the regard that it's rich people. I don't have a problem in the regard that it's a bunch of people getting together, making relationships, and, paving the way forward. What I have a problem with is simply I don't believe that they're adept. I think most of these people are fucking morons, and I hate to say that because they're supposed to be the smartest among us, but when it comes down to it, they have clearly demonstrated the ability that they have no idea what's going on in the wider world, whether it's my airplane comment from earlier, or it's the Russia-Ukrainian wars, that they think war is over, and that's very clearly not the case. They think that, we're gonna transition to EVs, which all the data says is not gonna fucking happen within this fucking century, and then going forward from that, like, these folks are so out of goddamn touch with reality. I just can't help but feel like they're sniffing their own farts. So yeah, I don't believe in these folks, but for entirely different reasons.
Okay. And then Doobie, go ahead, please.
So I'm still waiting for somebody to explain why a meeting being private makes it like shady
Yeah,
or
I can do that.
duplicitous somehow. But well, you can do it afterwards. But I think that we keep hitting on things, right? Like Scott said, they talk about overpopulation and nobody's taking action, etc. But the reality is, unfortunately, and I know Scott, like all of us, is in a first world nation, sitting very comfy. Their overpopulation is a massive problem in the developing world. That is just the truth. There's some places like Bangladesh or India where people are living on top of each other. Right? So it is absolutely a problem, given that these people they call them billionaires, but really they're industry leaders, right? Who see this, whose businesses are impacted by this, who interact with this daily. They understand where the issues are, and they have the resources they have resources that they can divert with the help of the governments that they're engaging with to help fix those problems, right? Like they have plenty of amazing initiatives that they put forward. The Young Global Leader Initiative is fucking beautiful. They've got like things like the Great Reset, what's that other one that Alex
Now I
Jones
know
was
you're
yelling
just
about?
memeing.
The Global Gender Parity Initiative, right? Great initiative. I feel like if we were to
Hey,
like go
Doobie,
down
what's the Great
point by
Reset?
point, wait 1 second, point by point, right? Point by
Don't be a
point
pussy.
to
What's
figure
the
out
Great
like
Reset?
stop. I'm
Maybe
not
people
being
don't know what it
being
is.
pussy. You're interrupting me. I'll get to it afterwards. Wait, hold on. Oh, it's the idea? If I'm off the top of my head, that we should use the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis that it caused, right? And the kind of like and the kind of
older
social
than
like
that. Much older than that.
well, the current iteration is about the COVID-19, how we should use this to basically shift society going forward into a place that's much healthier, not just for like future pandemics, but just overall, right? It could
Much
be
healthier?
something
Is
as
that
simple
what
as
the
like,
Great
hey,
Reset is? Why,
yeah.
why are we playing this
well,
game?
I know that you wouldn't frame it that way. You'd probably frame it in such a way that they want to treat us like cattle and herd us into fucking mega cities.
No,
and,
don't
and
tell
they
me
want
how
us
to frame
like
it. Just
they want us
actually
to
answer
just
the question.
go from work
Don't
to our
obfuscate.
cubicles, etc., etc.
Don't obfuscate. What is the
I'm
Great
not
Reset's
obfuscating,
actual intended goal?
right? It's the idea that it's to build like a more sustainable future for the common person, not for the billionaires.
The point of the Great Reset is to get rid of private ownership of property in general and to make sure that every individual within society is renting items. They have wonderful articles about the beautiful world that will exist when you don't get to rent an apartment. You only get to rent apartments, like you only get to use apartments at like hourly scheduled things, and that like you don't own any cooking ware, but the cooking ware will be like ordered via drone. The entire point of the Great Reset is to destroy the private ownership and except for those at the very top.
Okay, I looked into the Great
That's
Reset.
not-
I think what Doobie was describing is a lot more accurate. Scott, what you're
Like
talking
always.
about sounds more along the lines of like there's this
Is
saying.
in their own fucking words.
No,
The
hold on, hold on.
examples I use are their own
Just-
examples.
Hold on. Okay, there's a saying called nobody will own anything and everybody will be happy. And like
It's
this
you'll
is
own nothing
something
and
that
you'll be
came
happy.
from the World Economic Forum, something like that,
Yeah.
right? Except that this wasn't coming from like it's not like an official policy or a statement made by the World Economic Forum as a whole. It was a prediction made by a politician, and he was talking about how like as what you were saying, what you were describing, people will rent everything, you'll get it delivered by a robot, you don't have to own anything, you'll just use it and you can return it and get something new and you'll be happy with what you have. Like that was a prediction made just by one person.
It's the same policies and practices in World Vision are affirmed by Klaus Schwab himself in a 2008
Fine,
speech.
dude.
You can look it up on YouTube.
No, this was fact checked. Like I feel like maybe Charles
fact
Schwab.
check,
I have no
boys.
idea about Charles Schwab.
Fact
Okay,
check.
all
The
I know is
billionaires
that
got together with
my
your
bank
governments
that
to make
I
sure that
trade
you know
stocks with
social
is
media
Charles Schwab.
had the appropriate fact
Okay.
checkers, and you'll be happy about it. It was fact checked,
Bro,
boys.
you
Go
just
watch the
have
video
a
yourself.
response to everything. Now who's obfuscating?
I do.
Okay.
Well, I think
I said my
the
part.
idea.
Especially when you're
I think
full
the
of shit.
idea-
I know what I'm talking
I
about.
think the idea is that,
Gotcha.
that our current society is built around this idea of like scarcity. You know, human beings acting as like rugged individuals fighting over scarce resources, and then when they get a resource, they cling on to it to the detriment of their communities, to future generations, etc. Right. So I think what they're trying to do with the Great Reset is reset that. right? Get us to a more sustainable, more what's the word I'm looking for? More compassionate form of society, where people aren't living day to day fighting over scarce resources. They have what they need, and if they want something else, they can get it, but they're not going to hold on to it forever. They're not going to be able to say, "Oh, this house, this fucking mansion has been in my family for 200 years, and you don't get to live here, homeless person." And I feel like we're basically like humanity right now is operating with the same understanding that they did like 1,000 years ago, right? Which is that we need to fight over plots of lands and caves and fucking forests, because if we don't, we're going to starve to death on the street. And I think what the Great Reset is trying to do is trying to pull us away from that mindset to something that is beneficial for everybody, right? That, hey, you don't need to fight over everything. We can work together as a community, as a global community, as global citizens to make sure that everybody has what we need, and nobody is hoarding property, whether it's land or a fucking boat or whatever.
We get it, Kami. When billionaires are getting together with the state, right, to force a vision on you, they are trying to use government institutions. I know, guys, the institutions are strong. We love them so much. We want to use those government institutions, right, as a means of forcing onto you the things that you don't want, because don't worry, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy is somehow this beautiful message. It's not a beautiful fucking message if people don't want to fucking do it.
All right, here it is.
Sometimes
the reality is
given that I, like you, right, grew up in this kind of scarce society where we're made to fight over resources. I understand that it can be very difficult to even conceptualize that not being the case, right? Which is why these billionaires who haven't had to deal with this in their lives, right? They've come from places where they've had everything they want, so they understand what that life can feel like, right? So I think it's important for them to take leadership positions and help us find a way where everybody can have a lifestyle where we're not struggling to pay the bills, we're not struggling to keep the lights on, keep food on the table, get the new pair of shoes, right? We're doing something that's more sustainable for the future of our society, right? And yeah, that can be scary. It can be so scary that maybe the majority of society, if you were to present it to them, would say, "Hey, I don't want that. That's gross. I want fucking the new fucking Nikes, or I want the new AirPod or something." Well, okay, sure, but given that we understand that most people are not mentally in a place where they can grasp a concept like this, even though it'll be better for them down the line, even though it'll be better for future generations. Yeah, at some point you do need to nudge them in that direction, whether it's through media campaigns, through what we're showing them in movies or radio or whatever, or just government action to say, "Hey, you don't get to do this particular thing anymore," or you don't get to do 10% of this, and the next year it's 20%.
So hold on, please.
I'm going to summarize.
Lactoid has not gotten a chance to say anything. Then want to go to Alu, who's been trying to jump in as well. Okay, Lactoid.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. I mean, Doobie. So, do you not think there's like anything pernicious about this statement right here? Right, like you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. When you look at who it's coming from, when you look at it when it's coming from like incredibly powerful.
It came from a Danish politician.
Well, so it says like right here. It says based on input from members of the
No
World
one should have
Economic
relations to the
Forum.
Danes. That's true.
Right, so
it's part of their ad campaign.
I agree.
Just let him finish.
It's a prediction. It's not a policy.
Just let him finish, please.
Swedes are way better. Anyway, when we're talking about like even like a prediction, right? Like it certainly doesn't seem like this prediction is negative. In fact, the second sentence here is "you'll be happy." It seems to be a prediction of you'll own nothing, and it's a good thing. Happy, like we're gonna put a smiley face on it. Isn't there something kind of pernicious about billionaires who have disproportionate ownership, who are telling like the people, "Hey, you're not going to own anything, but don't worry, it's going to be just fine"?
The government.
So here's some added context.
Billionaires are some of the most
Why does people want to talk? Okay. Look, I'll just make this really quick and simple. Is that there's a reality here that I see from a lot of these folks that when I talk to them, they have the idea, whether you believe it or not, that basically Star Trek is actually a theoretical like possibility. Like we can actually get to that kind of like society. I think these people are fucking batshit. But when it comes down to it, that's what they are pushing for. So they altruistically are pushing for something that should be better. I just don't think it's going to be better.
Maybe they're just super optimistic. Okay, so
I don't want to share
the Danish politician, Lactoid. This is literally going to answer your question.
Lactoid.
Okay, the Danish politician who wrote that prediction later followed up clarifying that this was not a utopia or dream of the future, but a scenario showing where we could be heading for better and for worse.
I think
Why
we're
does
in
it- why
the
do we
weeds.
want- then why does it say
really,
happy?
I really
Why-
think we're in the weeds here.
Because
No,
it's a prediction that people will be happy.
So the
They're not,
prediction is that
they're
the
not
prediction-
saying that this is a good thing. They're just saying that people are going to be happy.
Come on,
And maybe
talk
people
about
aren't gonna-
getting in the
Oh my
weeds. Well, hold on. When it says
I think that's
No,
a- I think
you
that's
just
a
can't comprehend
dishonest-
English
you
language.
will
I don't
own
know.
nothing. Okay, so hold on.
I think that's a
This is
dishonest
English language, right?
interpretation,
When
though.
you own nothing and you'll be happy, am I being ridiculous in assuming that they're talking about you are
You
like
could
gonna
not
be
believe
happy?
them. That's fine,
like,
but that's their
somewhat
intent.
related
That
to
was
owning
not
nothing.
when I hear the
Not
words,
be-
when I hear,
Lactoid.
hold on, please.
Lactoid.
Like when
No. Hey, hey,
fucking minutes.
Yo, I'm the one talking. So everyone else holds on. I don't hold on. Okay? Lactoid.
Fair enough.
Lactoid. Don't worry about it. Lactoid. It could have simply be the case that a person said those words, right? And was like trying to draw out like an apocalyptic scenario it's kind of just devoid of context, and they're saying, hey, this is a bad thing, and it's and looks like we're heading to that, right? Like, and then it just gets repeated throughout the press, and people think, oh, this guy is in favor of this.
Yeah, so
No.
this is like a Kafka-esque or like Brave New World kind of mantra, and the billionaires are like kind of like being this dark humor of, you know, this is actually terrible. You're going to be happy owning nothing. I could be wrong, okay? But from what I've learned thus far, and based on the advertising that I have seen, and based on this ad of the guy smiling about the fact that he's going to own nothing and he's going to be really happy about that, and the fact that this messaging is coming from people who not only own more than any of us ever will, but also have more institutional power than any of us ever will. It certainly seems to be, at the very least, suspect. I think is probably a fair word to use. Like, I mean, wouldn't you agree, Prime?
Would I? I don't. I won't say that's at least suspect because I don't know the context beyond what our friend Jay Chow has given us, right? Like, I've heard this statement before.
I've
Right?
been trying to tell you guys the context, and everybody's
No,
like,
so-
"No, that's
yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're lying.
I
No, you're
agree.
naive for thinking about that." It's
So,
driving me
let me
crazy.
give you like an
I'm
example.
saying that like I've heard this before, and it sounds horrible. In that context, and everyone has said like it's a positive statement. I've never looked into it, but I can believe Jay Chow when this is a thing that's been repeated. And the context is it's a negative thing, and also that billionaires have taken to this statement and say like, oh no, that sounds like a great idea, right? Yeah, because it's despicable. I get that.
So yeah,
So,
so it's
yeah.
like it would be like I kind of view that in the same way if like, and I know some people who do this, right? Some very large like financial gurus who happen to own a fuck ton of apartments who are telling you not to buy a house because it's such a bad idea. Well, you know, we can have the conversation about whether or not purchasing a house is good or isn't good. But when you stand to benefit from me not having power and me not having a house or owning property, when you stand to benefit from me becoming a perpetual tenant for you, I think there's like that conflict of interest already brings up like a level of suspicion in my mind. And from what I understand about these people, and with the ad right behind Scott there says based on the input of members of the World Economic Forum's,
It's part of their
can't-
ad. You will own
Yeah,
nothing.
there's
is an
a-
ad campaign.
there was a
by the
whole
World
ad
Economic
campaign
Forum.
by the
And the
forum.
article was not talking about how it's like this dystopian future that's bad. It was talking about how wonderful the world will be when nobody owns anything except
Yeah.
for the government and a few corporations
That's
working together
terrifying.
in this beautiful union. It's literally just a new fucking beautiful Marcusian fascism. And they're like, no, it's
That's
not
so
really a big deal.
ridiculous.
Don't fucking worry about it. It's not ridiculous.
Wait a second. Okay,
Let-
It is
based on the-
ridiculous
let's-
because again,
Okay,
I
so
find it
Alice
really
Alice
concerning.
Alice been trying to jump in, so I got to give Alice some space. And then Doobie and Jay Chow. Okay, thank you.
I somehow disagree with all of you for different reasons, and I'm unsure which one to tackle. The economic forum, right? Like I get it. It's in group preference. Like I stated that at the beginning. I get that there is like all right. So Doobie, right? Would you have a problem with? I would think that an incentive for the WEC to be more open and more translucent would be the idea that there are people who come from areas where they didn't have the opportunity to be in these corporations or to be noticed by the administration of the WEC, who can, at the very least, look at some of the conversations that are happening on their top link platform or at the WEC conferences and be able to use that information and the conversations that are being had to better his own conditions or the conditions of his society. I think that information generally being open source and accessible isn't odd. I don't know. Do you agree with that concept that information being? I'm assuming that your argument against this would be that there are things that they talk about that would not be optically prime for them to talk about if there was an open audience, right? That's what I'm assuming your argument is going to be.
Hold on. So yes to that, right? Because a lot of times these people are just like brainstorming. They're trying to they have an issue. They're trying to figure out how to tackle this issue, and a lot of the ideas they're going to have when they're in these discussions are going to be really stupid, right? Like malformed. So it doesn't make sense for all that to be like streamed to the world where people like Scott can pick it apart and make some like a conspiracy theory about it, right? To like frighten people away from the future. So a lot of the things that they talk about when they're having like these one-on-one or like group conversations aren't even going to be like about business. They're going to be like building personal relationships with each other, getting to know each other. I don't think any of that needs to be streamed to the world. I think that a lot of these issues are so complex that it doesn't make any sense for the average person to be like a fly on the wall. Right. I think we got to accept that we don't get to know everything. That's okay. If you want to know, become an expert in the field, go through the process, and get into the fucking room as a contributor. I think it's kind of selfish to say, oh well, I need to be there watching, as if you could fucking understand what they're talking about anyway.
I don't think that's enough of a problem as you think it is. Like you're basically describing the fundamental nature of our current informational system, the internet. Like the information is all there. It's at your fingertips. You have to specialize in it. It's all there. You have to understand it. And there's going to be people who don't understand it but have an extreme opinion about it. Pickle, right? But at the end of the day, it being accessible leads to more people who do understand it being able to understand it and do things with that information. I don't know if that's necessarily a problem. A lot of it is going to be uninteresting. I agree. A lot of it is going to be cringy.
Not even just uninteresting. I think like things like trade secrets or like national secrets, right? That just shouldn't be out in the open. So I think it makes sense. Yeah, I think it's great to have some of these discussions in panels in public. Well, like if we're talking to like Pfizer, right, and they're discussing the rollout of a vaccine or something, right? They're going to be much less willing, I think, to have very honest, open, frank conversations if the public's watching them and other companies that are competitors are watching them and looking for ways to undercut their business.
Doobie, what does Will.i.am understand about global intersectional politics? What does Idris Elba know about Rwanda's current crisis?
These are thought leaders. These are people.
They're not thought
these
leaders.
Are people. Okay, hold on. These are people. Hold on. So when I say thought leader, I just mean this is a person who can be used as a mouthpiece, someone that that the average person knows and feels comfortable with. And if this person goes out on TV and says, "Hey, actually, climate change is an issue. Actually, transphobia is a problem."
I don't think you really believe this.
No, I
think you really. No. Let me
hold on. Are you telling me that you don't believe that people with massive platforms who've built up a lot of public trust through their artistry, whether it's like entertainment or like movies or like music or whatever, these people, when they go out and speak on an issue, they don't get attention? Because that's what this is about. It's about them getting attention, them driving the conversation.
That's not the argument. The argument isn't whether or not there is a benefit from Idris Elba understanding global economics. The argument is whether that's more valuable than millions of people having access and maybe hundreds of thousands of people being able to leech onto that and understand things better. The question isn't whether Idris Elba super understands foreign policy. The question is Idris Elba solely understanding global policy better than potentially hundreds of thousands of El Salvadorians for, I don't know why I said that example, but whatever, you get the point. But people who are not necessarily.
I think you're a little confused.
Okay,
I
go
think a
ahead.
little confused because my understanding, so Idris Elba is one of those people that went out to give a speech, right? Because it's going to get attention, because he's way more charismatic than some economists or scientists or whatever, and he's able to use this platform to drive this issue. So when I'm talking about like meetings held in private, I don't think Idris Elba is the kind of person that I'm talking about, right? Maybe the meeting that they have in private is just them trying to figure out what the speech is going to be, how he's going to word certain things, etc. Right. So I feel like that would kind of take away the magic from the
Okay,
speech.
so
But sure, if you want to have that in public, go for it. What I'm talking about when I say like industry leaders having meetings in private with the governments are companies like Pfizer, right? Companies like like oil companies, right? Who need to deal with climate change and need to find a way to change their business in such a way that isn't going to destroy the planet. Right?
I
I feel like
agree that intelligent people should talk with intelligent people, but we're talking about access. Idris Elba is extremely charismatic, or at least he plays characters that are. I'm at least slightly I'm bare minimum charismatic. What's the line of charisma where you earn access to the Davos Institute?
wait, are you asking why you can't be a young global leader and like go out and give speeches?
I'm asking where is the line where I
Well, he
become
can't penetrate
accessible?
the cabinet.
Well, you need to build
he
build
doesn't
a
have
platform.
he doesn't have the power to
Build a
be able
platform,
to
build
subvert
celebrity,
national
become a
institutions for the World
national
Economic Forum's
national
business
figure.
interests.
I'm sorry, a global figure. That if I were to go to like Africa or fucking Brazil or wherever on the planet, so if I say, hey, look at this guy, people are gonna know who the fuck you are. Do
Do I
that,
need
and
to
I'm sure
be
they'll invite you.
do I need to be a global figure in order to do good for my economy, my local economy, my
No,
international economy? So then
no,
why
of
would we
course.
use that as the metric? If I'm Pedro Pascal and I'm fucking this little fucking 18-year-old in Venezuela, right? And I want to learn about and engage or at least observe what they're talking about at the higher level, the peak of society. We're talking about people who are purely aristocrats. You don't get into Davos unless you are, right? If I want to do that and then I am able to successfully integrate some of these solutions into my local society, that's a good thing. I don't understand. Like at the end of the day, we're talking
But it
about
seems
access
like
to information.
you do have access to that. What you're saying that you don't have
You
access
have
to
access
is
to
like
an
the sauce.
interpretation of
Wait, hold on.
interpretation.
You have you have the access to the sausage itself, but not the making process of the sausage. Where all these people are like brainstorming about how to fix this like certain issue. So and I think that's fine. I think for the average person that is totally acceptable.
I think it's totally fine in society and a plus that people realize how dumb millionaires are. Yes, I agree. The foundating, like, or that's not a word, but you get my point, right? The foundating, probably don't. The foundation of what they're building here, it's gonna sound wacky because again, they're brainstorming, like you said. I agree with this. They're not gonna sound optically good. They're gonna sound like idiots, at least, who are trying to come up with solutions. Inherently, that's a part of the process. That's a good thing for people to realize. I think it's a problem that people think that if you're successful, you're hyper intelligent. I would like to see like the process, the sausage being created so that people understand it's not just pure intelligence happening here. There is brainstorming. There are bad ideas that get played with and moved around until they become good ideas. That process is integral, and to cut people out of it only helps the ultra rich, only helps the aristocracy
how
with
is
this
that being
image
cut
building.
out?
I think
that-
I
what
think it
you're
allows these
dealing with-
people, and these are people that have like the most to lose in society, right? So it allows them to be honest, open, and frank with their suggestions and ideas. Because if they weren't able to do that, right? If they had to worry about millions of people watching them, waiting for them to slip up and post something on Twitter that destroys the jobs of thousands of people in their company, I don't think they'd even attend.
Like,
This is
Alou,
not-
if you
this is
actually wanted
not-
to know the process, like you don't actually want to be a billionaire and like become a member of the WEF. You want to become an academic. You want to become an economist. You actually want to do data work and like see actually the effects of the policies that they're proposing or they're passing. And maybe you could actually join the WEF as an academic and like propose these
young global leader.
thought-provoking economists. Become a young global leader. Get a Nobel Peace Prize in economics. Like, actually,
idea-
this is what you when you talk about process. I want to know the process. This shouldn't be gatekept. Well, start going for a PhD.
This is
Which,
what
if we're
you were
pretending that
what you
the
are
Ivy
talking
League
about.
system is
What you
not
are
biased
talking
in
about.
how it selects for
What you are talking
its
about.
its its
What you are
foundational
talking
presence
I
is
can't
insane.
hear two people at the same time. This is fascinating.
Go ahead. I've been talking a lot.
What you're talking about is you are talking
Who?
about. It is so fucking insane to me that anybody would simp for the WEF. It's beyond me. But what you are essentially
Nice.
talking about is billionaires, right? Getting together
Billionaires.
with state leaders and NGOs
Politicians.
that are partially funded by the state and partially privately funded, etc. So you have all of the representatives of
They're funded.
force in the cathedral, right? And you were talking about them getting together to plan how the world should be and utilize force against people that might not necessarily agree with their ideas, but we can use our money and we can use the state and laws and regulations to shape the world in a way that we believe is better, but that you people don't necessarily want.
What if
And
you
the-
want
you
better
are-
if
this
they
is-
did this
This
over
is
Don't
an
want yet.
This is an advertisement.
Don't want yet.
This is an advertisement for slavery, and you are all
That's ridiculous.
This is
tacitly
slavery now.
supporting slavery.
Did you
There's
guys
no
see the
fucking argument against
Did you see the ad? So the one the ad that I think highlights maybe a different issue with this one is the
Western
the-
values.
what-
will be
yeah,
tested to the
Western
breaking
values
point.
will be tested at the breaking point. I'm
An
very
implicit
like,
not?
understanding.
Wait,
that
stop,
Western
wait,
values
Lactoid,
are
come on. You
wrong.
talk about China, you
I'm-
talk about communism.
well, no,
Are they
I-
not?
No, so
Yes, they
so
are.
well, in the context of this ad, this is what I'm concerned about. I'm somewhat suspicious that could the World Economic Forum be a platform for attendees, such as representatives of China and other like authoritarian regimes, to push for corporations to push their own Western governments to shift more to their side in order to
Guys,
no,
to
that's
offer,
ridiculous.
to offer
Guys,
business
guys,
It is
opportunities.
literally the opposite.
Communism is really
Guys,
good for
It is literally the
globalization.
opposite.
Yeah, because
Hold on, the
guys,
Western
guys,
values we're
is
talking
really
about
good for
is fucking
liberalized
patriarchy,
market supply
homophobia, transphobia, etc.
Doobie,
These are the
Doobie,
hold on.
Doobie.
No, you're upset.
the
Hold on,
fuck
but
up.
that is
No,
actually
you're-
the
you're
truth.
Guys,
You're
This is
fucking
why they're
ridiculous.
pushing
worry.
gender parity
Don't
initiatives.
worry. Guys, don't worry. ESG corporate takeover to force our diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives will get rid of the patriarchy. Guys, don't worry. You'll eat much less meat. That'll be fucking beautiful, won't it? Climate change is going to
You're
disperse
dumbing
so
this
many
down.
people. We need to accept
These are
all of these
long-term projects.
immigrants.
Yeah, it's not
You
not just
can-
we
if
do
you
this one
want-
thing
you're
and
just
suddenly
being
patriarchy's
outraged
gone.
over and over
None of these
again.
people think that way. So in fact, I pulled it because I remember reading this years ago, right? But I pulled it up just to be sure. That phrase, you'll own nothing and be happy, comes from an article where they're basically talking about a utopian society where energy is free, transportation is so cheap, they don't need. It doesn't make sense to own a car in a city, etc. Like they're not talking about like tomorrow we're going to take your fucking cars away and make you rent a car for the weekend if you want to go out.
Slave.
They're not talking about that. They're talking about a future in which energy is literally
material
free,
conditions.
and
They
so
are talking-
they're talking about
they are
a post-scarcity,
talking about-
basically a post-scarcity society where AI and robots do all the
Gay-face
fucking work,
communism.
and all you need to do is just hang
Read
out.
between the
You hang
lines,
out.
Doobie. Look
No,
at the
bro,
ad.
there's
No,
no
read the
in
lines.
between.
Read the
No,
lines in
they
between.
are
They're
talking-
talking about
they are
a sustainable
Doobie,
future
you
where people who
fascist
aren't wage
fucking
slaves,
piece of shit.
who aren't
Shut
fucking
up.
wage slaves.
You're fucking
That's what they're
fascist.
talking about.
You're literally
That's
a fascist.
what's
The amount of
between the
mental
lines and on
damage
top
You're
of
literally a
it.
fascist.
It's
Wow.
sustainable.
Wow.
People
We
aren't
get it.
wage
You're
slaves.
fascist.
That's what it is.
Okay.
We get it. You're a fascist. I get that you like fascism.
Stop. Oh my god. Wow.
That's a
guys.
real fascist.
All right. Ty, I'm guessing you're gonna be the voice of reason. I'm gonna disagree with what you're gonna say, but you're gonna be the voice of reason. So I'm gonna give you a chance. Calm us down here, right?
It's the voice of, it ain't no
Lactoid
big
and-
deal. It's not a voice of
Lactoid and
reason.
Alu. Ty.
Reason is opposing fascism.
Oh my god,
Hi.
I love you all. All right, so here's the thing. I don't know if I'm going to be the voice of reason, but I think both parties are actually a little bit right here. There are definitely people who get together who have these ideologies that are goddamn awful. Like I would never trust these people with a potato gun, let alone like keeping economic policy or your children around them, right? But there are other people out there that I think really do have, like, if you will, a level of benevolence to them. They want, if you will, a greater good. I don't agree with how they want to get there. Absolutely not. And yeah, I totally get the whole like be scared part, because I don't think Star Trek turns out nearly as nicely as a lot of people think it would. But when it comes down to it, there is levels where just assuming that all of these are just absolutely monstrosity actors, I think that completely goes beyond the pale because most of these people don't even agree with each other.
Let's go to Lactoid, then Alu.
Yeah, I just, again, I
And
think
Jay
you
Chow.
read the lines, but also read between the lines and look at the context in which this stuff is being said and the claims that are being made here, right? You know, whatever you want, you'll rent, right? You're not going to own anything. You're going to rent everything. Western values, they're going to be, they're going to be tested. And we got to let in more refugees, right? We got to do more, like there seems to be like prescriptions that are being made, within the advertisement campaign here. And specifically the prescription that I think concerns me the most is, what are they saying? Well, the U.S. is not going to be the power. There's going to be other countries like that are going to be like important powers. Western values are going to be, tested. And what's the purpose of these statements? What are they trying to get at? I think that they're trying to appeal to non-Western countries. That's what it appears to be, right? It appears to be that these people with direct financial interests and investments in China and other like non-Western countries seem to be trying to appeal to that ideal. And also, again, like it's so fucking skeptical. Like, I'm so skeptical when you have people who own, again, more than anything they own more than any of us ever will, telling us that we don't need to own anything, that we're going to rent everything. From who? I'm assuming from them, right? That sure helps them out. What's the end goal here? What are they pushing for? Are they just coming together just to like write a science fiction novel? Or are they meeting with heads of state for a reason? Are the heads of state there who are listening to people opine on stuff like this and make these predictions and kind of sugarcoat it and make it look good?
They're petitioning those that wield force over you to make changes for the world that they envision that
They're
benefits
petitioning
them.
Facebook likes.
So am I good enough?
The fuck are you talking about? No, they're
Clearly,
at Davos meeting
Facebook ad.
they're meeting with government officials talking about trying to do everything they can from people that, by the way, use money and fund them, and then saying, hey, we'll fund
Money
things,
exists.
we'll help you out, right?
Funding exists.
You have the powers that be trying to come together with ways that they can force you into their world vision of eating
that's
less
called
meat,
politics.
accepting more refugees, creating
Scott,
carbon
I
taxes.
apologize that there's a higher power than you on the individual level. Like, I'm sorry, this goes against everything that
What you're talking about
believe
is
in
the
an anarchist
marriage of corporation
society.
and the state. We have a name for that. It's called fascism, and you have several people here openly supporting it.
Like, hold on. Even like the
Not
owning
fascism.
thing.
Wait.
Is anybody here skeptical of somebody, a rich guy telling you you're not going to own anything, but you'll be happy? Is there anything skeptical about that?
Okay,
Yeah,
again,
you know what? I'll tell them now. I
context.
want to own
You need to look
something,
at the
but I'm not going to be
context
like,
in which that
you
was said.
fucking billionaire conspiracy. You're trying to force down your worldview down my throat. I'm going to fucking kill you. No.
They're literally
Hold on,
trying
hold
to
on,
force their worldview.
Lactoid.
That's a
You
fact.
need to look at the context in which I was said. So
It's
one
just
of the other
It's
things.
literally a fact. They
Oh,
are
God.
petitioning people that make
Okay.
the laws
Did they
that
petition
you have to follow.
Did they knock on your door? Hey, Mr. Scott, where the
No,
road
because they don't have to knock on your door.
Hey,
They can go
hey,
directly to the FBI director.
Got it. Alu, go ahead.
Give me 1 second, bro. I'm sorry.
Get fucked.
Fuck. All right. No. Let someone else go, and I'll go after. I have to reformat. I can't think in text at the same time.
Actually,
Okay,
I didn't want to
okay.
shout.
Okay,
I don't want to use my point to
It's
shout
just
Okay. Everyone, stop. Shut up. We got Jay Chow. I said Jay Chow could go next. Then we'll go Corey, who hasn't
well,
talked.
let me.
in a
I'll
bit.
be good by
And
then. I'll
then
be good
I.
by then.
All right. Jay Chow.
All right. Just to throw a bone at Tiberius, and also address am I like simping for the WEF? I don't like being called that because I don't think I am a simp for the WEF. I could criticize them for actual things such as their attempt to infiltrate the decision making of the United Nations. I find that to be incredibly dangerous. Something that actually Lactoid and Scott, I'm surprised that you guys haven't brought this up.
I did.
And you for like the past 40 minutes, you guys have just been yelling at this ad, which is just a list of predictions. It's nothing. It's not even policy. But to throw a bone at Tiberius, like I have a lot of criticisms of people in the past who they have their expertise. They are backed by legitimate organizations such as the World Bank and the IMF, who have gone around the developing world saying, hey, follow these policies of like decreasing your funding towards these social programs so that you can get out of debt and like the IMF could give you money, or to like go into massive debt into spending on a number of infrastructure projects, with like building this mall, which ends up to be like really old and crusty, has like no, it's just bad infrastructure policies and actually doesn't produce any wealth. Like what neoliberalism has done, and I will admit, is that it has caused debt crises. It has caused inflation. It has caused a number of standards of living all across the world to decrease. Those are valid critiques of globalization as a whole, as well as a number of policies that people who go to the WEF want to implement. But what is kind of nice about today is that the IMF and the World Bank are completely different. And the same thing goes for the WEF. The WEF used to be all about economics. It used to all be about how can we make globalization as good and fast and better as possible. And a lot of it is for their self-interest. That is correct. We all act within our self-interest. Doesn't mean that self-interest is zero-sum. We could all benefit if we all pursued our self-interest. It's not a they versus them kind of a situation, or us versus them kind of situation. But the WEF has transformed to this day where they're talking about a lot of pressing issues that have something to do with economics, but are not solely for the purpose of driving profit. They're talking about climate change. They're talking about labor practices. They're talking about COVID. They're talking about the Ukraine war and how that has affected global supply chains. How best can we deal with the Ukraine war right now? And how well can we actually reorganize our global economy so that we could get back to a number of standard of living where we don't have to maybe rely on Russian energy? Those are totally valid problems that require, I will say, global solutions. And the WEF is a forum for those kinds of discussions. And like the WEF at Davos is just one meeting for a number of weeks at one place. The WEF is year round. You're a member for that organization, and you're making a number of decisions. But it just so happens that when Davos happens, then everybody starts complaining about it. I guess it's because it's on the media, it's on the news, people are more salient about it. But like 1 week later, everybody's gonna forget about it and carry on their day.
Okay.
So they talk about climate change, but the majority of them fly on private jets. They talk about labor, but the majority of them are anti-union. They talk about all sorts of things. And at the end of the day, most of these people are antithetical to the solutions.
Yeah, you could call them
What we're talking about,
That's
the value of Davos Institute and the I was about to say the WWE. The WEF isn't in the conference itself. It's in, again, access, right? Now, when the other part of it that y'all have been talking about, access to information. You are dealing with people who are uniquely in the position to know a broader level of information about given sectors. That's just unequivocally true. These people are at the zenith of markets. They understand, or maybe not understand, but at least have access to information that your average person does not. That's where the magic is. Being able to talk to someone who is at the zenith of their career and at the zenith of a given market. That's what you're actually paying $600,000 a year for. It's not at the Davos Institute. It's fucking TopLink. It's the constant access. It's the pervasive access. It's the long-term access. Now, on the other hand of it, you guys are talking about their ad that they made like 3 years ago about you'll own nothing and be happy. At the end of I interpret that as you'll own nothing and be happy. I don't interpret that as you'll rent and be happy, because at the end of the day, renting versus single-family homes is a conversation that's entirely contextual upon your wealth. If I am wealthy and I have the ability to operate homes as assets, then home ownership is fucking great. It's a surfing at the beach.
It says on the screen in the ad, whatever you want, you'll rent.
That's fine. If I'm it's irregardless of my point, right? Like if I'm relatively lacking in terms of the amounts I can invest, which isn't really true anymore, but regardless, it may make more sense to rent because single family homes are insanely inefficient in terms of energy value, in terms of financial interest, in terms of logistics, whatever, right?
Right.
Furthermore,
You'll own
when
a
I
pod,
hear
maybe.
you'll own nothing and be happy, what I actually hear is the truest liberal axiom. And the truest liberal axiom is we will improve your material conditions to such a point that the rest will become reduced. We will improve your material conditions to such a point that whether or not you have ownership or you're renting is almost irrelevant because you will have food, shelter, and access to healthcare. That's a liberal mantra. It's not the
That is not
communist
liberal. That's progressive.
You
No,
will
it's not.
try my
One
single
condition.
family
It's not.
home.
It is
for my
inherently liberal. It
cold,
is
dead
not
hands.
progressive.
I
It is,
swear
it
to
is
God.
inherently liberal.
I'm
It
not
is
living in a
inherently
fucking
liberal.
pod.
Absolutely not. I fundamentally disagree with this. It is inherently liberal. Liberalism is improving good for the most amount of people. I'm
That
not a
is not
liberal.
remotely what liberalism
It is
is.
absolutely what
It's
liberalism is.
communitarianism.
There
Hey,
is no liberalism without egalitarianism.
Liberalism could
communitarianism.
change to the point where it does become that,
If
but
it
that's
was
some very
if it was
esoteric, like
liberalism, you
semantic
wouldn't have
argument.
used the term material condition.
Let's not.
Yes.
Let's
No,
not.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Liberals use
Guys,
material
red
conditions as a
flag.
metric
guys,
constantly.
I don't want to argue about the definition of liberalism. All right. Let's go to Corey, and then Ty, and then Doobie. All right.
Yeah, just
Also,
to
we're in bonus time. So like we've gone past like the end of the usual end of this thing. So be aware if you need to drop. That's okay. We're already done with that. But like if you want to continue the conversations, please stick around. All right, Corey.
yeah, just to engage with Lactoid a bit. So like I made my position clear in terms of like I don't advocate for the World Economic Forum or like for these types of meetings. And like so I don't know all the context behind this ad, but it's been on a loop, so I've been watching it the same as you. But like it seems to, at least to me, like you're reading too much into it, at least as far as I can know from my perspective. Where like it's making predictions, and like one of those predictions that like Scott brought up is like you will you'll eat or consume less meat, right? But I don't know how that makes any prescriptions. Like, what if like you advocate for reducing subsidies to animal agriculture? Like, what if it's like that's the direction of how like you consume less meat, just because like it'll be cost prohibitive?
Right. There are clear prescriptions now in terms of, or like end goal prescriptions. That they're obviously not going to get into the nitty gritty about how they're going to get there. I think that's probably
Name
true.
one policy that
But-
does that.
Hold on. So when we're talking about like you're going to eat less meat, I think it's safe to assume that the advocacy here is
Which we
eating
probably
less
both
meat.
agree on. Like that's probably like the trend, at least, and probably the
Sure.
direction
Look,
to go in.
the specific thing of you'll eat less red meat. I have less of an issue with that one. I think you could accomplish that just by removing like agricultural subsidies. I'm more concerned with the very broad statements of Western values will be tested. You'll own nothing and be happy. That one I think is clearly like the worst. I think that's probably part of the reason it's got the most pushback. You'll rent everything you need. Of course, it doesn't say where you'll rent it from. I mean, again, look at the people who it's coming from. You have to look at like the work not only in terms of like what they're saying, but what they're not saying and who it's coming from. Right?
Okay, but the wealthy, do they eat meat?
They might. I don't fucking know. I mean,
They
can probably afford the lab-grown meat, right?
I'm just saying, like, I would say it's probably fair to say, like, the vast majority of people, they consume animal products. Okay, I don't think that's a controversial statement, right? And so, like, in that, I'm not saying that they have your interest in mind. I'm definitely not going to go that far. But at least, there is like, you can make some sort of argument that they're not completely like selfishly interested alone. If they're like if they at least recognize that meat consumption may be not the best.
Let me interject for just a second. Calm.
Sure.
I won't scream at anybody this time. Right. So when you say, how do we connect these dots? Right. When you have the UN and WF leaders and corporations saying that climate change is such an existential threat that we need to massively reduce nitrogen runoffs in farms, right? And what we need to do is impose massive regulations on the Netherlands to the point where they basically can no longer have cattle. And then you have representatives from the UN telling them, well, that's not a problem because you import soy from Brazil and the cows are eating the soy. So all of you just need to eat the soy instead of growing cattle, and you'll be able to meet all of your nitrogen standards. Never mind that this causes a reduction in supply in food to the world that they're exporting out to, and causes inflation in food prices, and might actually lead to people starving in other places because of those increased food prices. It doesn't matter because we got to stop these things. Now, that's very different than a group of people saying it would be better that we do these things and our farms we're going to do, and we want to put out literature as to why it's healthier to eat certain things, than saying we're going to work together with leaders and heads of state to impose restrictions that cause farmers to abandon their farms so that we can expand the city into these areas in the Netherlands and have a war on farmers with regulations and state enforcement to intentionally drive the price of meat up and to make food costs go higher because shut up and eat the soy. We told you so. It's for your own good. There's a huge difference between those two.
And you'll rent the soy. You won't even own the soy. It'll be,
so
it'll be shipped in through Amazon drones.
I need an out real quick. I've got a closing statement, then I just gotta go because I gotta work in the morning. So, just real quick. This is probably going to sound like it's a dig at Fabian or Scott. It's not, but it is kind of like what you're talking about. There's a lot of people who are looking to put their worldview on you, whether it's the church, whether it's Democrats, whether it's Republicans, whether it's you. You might be doing it, one of you panelists, right? Institutions, personal issues, all those kind of things. Everyone's has an agenda. Everyone's pretty active. I'm not nearly concerned about the other guys getting involved. I'm more concerned about if you are getting involved, because that's the real thing that's going to make a difference in your own life. Is that, are you actually advocating your best interest, or are you pulling a 9 to 5? You go home, you sit out, and then you get ready for the next day. Because if that's the case, well, that might be one of the reasons why things aren't going your way. But anyway, I've been Tiberius D. I appreciate you all for having me, but I have a real job that I got to get to. So I appreciate you all having me, and we'll catch you next time.
I openly admit that I am doing everything I can to impose my worldview onto you, because the rest of you are wrong.
Hey, likewise.
Doobie.
Scott, that's the one thing we can agree on.
Doobie can agree with that too.
Everybody could.
Well, I love Scott, even if he needs to be
consistent worldview.
corrected.
He just has.
That's not true.
Devil's advocate.
I've said many times. I like good things and I dislike bad things. I want to describe some good things to you. Okay. This is what's when the quote is fully fleshed out. This is what they're talking about. I'm going to read it to you. It says, "Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or should I say our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in the city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to accommodation, transportation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. One by one, all these things became free, so it didn't make any sense for us to own much." It goes on to say that if they need something, if they want to go somewhere, they call like an automated car, and it comes and picks them up within minutes. They can call a flying car if they need that, and that's all. This is all totally free. If they want to cook something, it doesn't make any sense to keep like a crepe cooker or a fucking pasta strainer in their cupboard, because they can just go on an app, say, "Hey, I need this thing," and it's delivered to their door within minutes. Totally free. So what this is laying out is a post-scarcity society where anything and everything you could possibly need is free, and so it doesn't make sense to cling on to things that you guys would like to, right? We're talking about reformatting the of human civilization away from this kind of like rugged individualism where we're fighting over like pieces of material, something where like we can say, "Hey, yeah, I'm not fucking using that chair anymore. Why is it in my fucking house?" Well, today you would say, "Oh, I paid $200 for that fucking chair. I don't want to get rid of it." But someone out there needs a fucking chair. So in this society, would say, "Hey, I need a chair." Go on the app, say, "Hey, deliver me a chair." They deliver you a fucking chair. When you don't want it anymore, you don't need it anymore. You say, "Hey, come pick it up." It's that simple. And this terrible thing that they were talking about sounds like fucking paradise to the average person in the world who's struggling to find food, struggling to find clothing that fits, struggling to find shoes and transportation, and grinding 9 to 5. This is a society that they're talking about where people don't even work. They don't work because everything is done by fucking robots. They're literally talking about like a utopian post-scarcity society. That's where that phrase comes from. And in that kind of society, I think it makes sense to say it wouldn't make sense to own a lot of shit. or anything. Because if you need something, you just order it and then get rid of it whenever you're not using it anymore. It makes sense to say, hey, why do I need to own this house?
What we're talking about is essentially
you said a very long strain of things instead of just saying what they're talking about is communism. That's all you needed to say.
What we're talking about is people not starving in the fucking street because you decided to cling to your fucking private property.
I want to read one paragraph here. In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we do not need it.
Sure.
My living room is used for business meetings when I am not there.
What's wrong with that?
Okay.
We're optimizing space.
It's a good question. What is wrong with that?
What's wrong with other people coming into my house and using my living room for business meetings?
Okay, so again, you're doing the thing where you're like, oh shit, they're gonna come and sit on my sofa or steal my shit
They literally are.
Okay, think about it again. This concept, right? Well, it's when you're not there. When you're not there, I'm assuming they're not coming. But in this concept, if they steal, it wouldn't make sense for them to steal shit because they could get all the same shit for free within minutes. Like this is why it doesn't make sense to say, oh god, they're gonna come to my house and steal my fucking silverware. They can get their own fucking silverware for free. Why would they need to do that?
So they're just like, okay, this is just like Star Trek. They're just like,
that phrase is meant to describe literally scarcity utopia society. It is not meant to be applied to today. It's not meant to be applied to today and used to scare people away from a better world.
Okay, so wait, hold on. What you're saying is then that like people are paying $600,000 and governments are subsidizing a bunch of rich people to get together and say, well, what if we did Star Trek but in real life? That's
no,
like
it's how do we do Star Trek? It's how do we do Star Trek but in real life? That's what they're trying to get to. Some of these people are born incredibly wealthy. Some of these people are born incredibly wealthy. All they fucking do is sit around and think of ways to minimize the guilt they feel from being incredibly wealthy when the rest of the world is starving.
You're lying.
So, and a lot of this is just virtue signaling. Because they can't do this right now. Unfortunately, because people like you exist. Because people like you exist. You need to be nudged over time to a better perspective, and that takes getting rid of hate speech on Twitter
about how amazing fucking communism is.
Listen, it's not. Don't want to call that communism. Call communism if you'd like. What I'm talking about is a reality in which people aren't starving to death because they don't have fucking food. It's happening right now.
Doobie, listen. Let me simply say this.
Oh my god! Yeah, simply say that. The only thing I got to get to Lactoid.
Yeah, okay, it's very simple. All right, it's very simple. This is an ad campaign. They are attempting to change people's minds. This is not some simple like, hey, the world might look like this one day. What this is them actively. This is them. Jay Chow, shut up. This is them actively putting forward their vision of the future and saying that all of you people with your Western values and your rugged individualism and your demand for private property are standing in our way, and we, the billionaires, are working with corporations, NGOs, and your state actors to impose things on you to force this beautiful communist utopia upon you.
You're making this up.
Standing in your own way because you're clinging to shit because it was what you were born into.
All made up.
Lactoid, you can respond to both of that stuff.
Yeah. So I do think this is an ad campaign, but from the thing that you linked, here's another paragraph. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact I have no real privacy. Nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that no one will use it against me. All in all, it is a good life, much better than the path we were on, where it became so clear that we could not continue with the same model of growth.
So, Lactoid, do you believe that the people who were envisioning this prediction actually thought it was a good thing?
So again, is this just like a
what
Star Trek
okay?
novel?
Think about.
They're saying
Lactoid. The person literally fucking clarified and said that this is neither a utopia or a dystopia. This is just where where we may be going for better or worse. It's just a possible fucking future. You guys are getting so triggered over a prediction.
And I think a much better future.
This is
a much better future than what you're proposing.
This is where we have to go.
Between nothing, because they're just making this up out of thin air.
jerking
No,
off.
we get it. We get it.
It's where
we
we
get it.
should
we
go.
Get it.
Because
We get
again,
it.
this future,
Doobie,
as scary as it
J.
sounds, that people might see your porn history, is a future in which people aren't starving to death
I
and needing
disagree
to
with
get up at
Doobie
6
here.
a.m. to go grind away in the fucking
This is
factory
a
to feed their family.
This is a
That's
prescription.
a much better. That's a much better
This
world
is
than most people live in today.
This is a prescription of the things that you have to accept
Phobia.
because
Other
climate
P, the
and
other
because of
P,
all of
prediction.
this is a prescription of where we have to go. And don't worry, you'll be happy. And don't worry that you don't have privacy or security. But we had to do these things because of climate and because
You're
of
not dealing
scarce
with his
resources,
argument.
etc.
You're not dealing with his argument. His argument, Doobie's argument, comes down to, I believe that if certain premises are correct, if I own nothing but I have access to all of my material conditions met, I can eat, I can sleep under shelter, I have access to healthcare, then that is a fair deal. And you're saying in return, just they have a plan and it's nefarious, but you're not actually dealing with his contention.
That is a nefarious plan. To have,
Why is it
to
what
have
makes
your
that
better-
nefarious?
Yes, to have
The
your
nefarious plan is
betters-
to make their lives better. Yeah.
Hold on, no,
to have,
let him.
to have your betters, right? Make sure that you have no privacy. Make sure that you have anxiety about what may be used against you, but it's okay because your betters control everything and own everything, and the world is okay because your material conditions are met. Is literally
Okay.
the socialist nightmare that often keeps me awake at night,
so
motherfucker.
Okay, can I
I'm so
respond
happy
to that? Can I
because it
respond
doesn't to me.
So the part of the trailer, I guess, that talks about if your material conditions are at peak, right? You have them met, and as a result of that, private property is irrelevant to the equation. It doesn't matter. Fucking lovely, right? If the other part where they're saying, well, I'm surveilled 100% of the time, or if we were to insert any authoritarian measure, I would,
No.
in my opinion, right,
Let me
because we are talking about real people who created a real trailer and acknowledge that to some degree they are in some sort of bubble, right? That aspect is more likely to be a part of the fact that they are aristocratic fucks. And so, of course, they're going to talk about, well, we want them to be comfortable with us being in control of the mechanism, but that's the fucking question, right? If I said to you that our industries are going to become more and more hyper-efficient, I don't think you're going to disagree. I think you agree with me that in terms of global economics, where we were 400 years ago and where we are now is a clear improvement in material conditions. That
Let me
as we
explain to
progress, please let me get to the end of this because I'm retarded. Okay, if we agree, right, that progressively as society advances, material conditions get better and industry gets more efficient and more nuanced and more complicated, then we might also agree that there's a point at which you have to make a decision. Are we going to allow understanding that we have a near superfluous, efficient system that is capable of distributing goods from point A to point B, right, without any real debilitating costs? Are we going to allow that to be owned by private interest, which to me is essentially fiefdoms? You essentially have maybe what you want, because you have yellow and black flag, anarcho-capitalism. Or alternatively, since it is a mechanism capable of distributing good from A to B with little issue, we start nationalizing. These are the questions. Now, Davos Institute, which is actually ironically on your side of things.
Okay.
The Davos Institute has an interest in this being privatized, and so therefore wants there to be some mechanism of whether you are comfortable with me still owning the totally efficient, capable of distributing regardless of class system. They want to retain ownership.
Okay.
You should agree with this. You want
okay.
this.
No. That was a long way to say that I should agree with your fascism. So let me explain. Okay. First of all, the utopia that is put forward in the ad campaigns and everything is a complete myth. There's no such thing as post-scarcity because man and his thoughts and his will are a scarce resource. It doesn't matter if the plants, the trees,
Bullshit.
the ores, the everything. I can come up with ideas and you can come up, Alu, with ideas that no man could think of, right? That is a scarce resource. The time that an individual invests, number one. Number two, understanding that is
we talking about fair value?
understand. Yeah, we believe in.
I'm joking. Please continue.
Listen,
Please continue.
listen.
Please.
So,
I'm sorry.
man has an inherent right to his body, and he has a right to the fruits of his labor. Okay, when he homesteads property, right? He mixes his labor, his time, his energy, his will, and creates something that only man can do, so far as we know. And when you take those things away from him, you cannot separate that labor from the commodity that it is, and it becomes a form of enslavement. Okay, what you were talking about in the utopia where all material conditions are met is that you don't get to own anything. What you're saying is that in this post-scarcity world that we presumably live in, the man does not have the ability to own. He does not have the ability to achieve. He does not have the ability to shape his world and have ownership of things and grow his environment. And instead, what you were talking about is a comfortable slavery.
Can I?
Bullshit.
Okay, so I understand where you're disagreeing now, right? You seem to equate ownership with the ability to create and innovate, and I don't agree with that. I don't think that you have to. I mean, in certain legal statuses, yes, right, depending on the IP law in your given nation. But I don't agree with the concept that just naturally, just biology, you must own a thing to be able to create something new. If you're saying that by owning nothing, you cannot create, I fundamentally disagree. They don't make any statements on you cannot create. They say you do not own, right?
No, that's
To
not.
my
Yeah,
mind,
it could be
point
as
is
simple
not
as
owning
pulling,
a
pulling
supply
away from the
chain,
individual,
not
pulling away from the
you're
individual.
saying-
Like, hey, when
you're
I
saying-
work on a new thing, a new technology, it's not for me. It's not to make myself wealthy because I have
It is
everything I
for
need.
the
It's for the
collective.
collective. It's for everybody because
Altruism
I'd
is
like to make the
evil.
world a better place.
Altruism
and it is
evil.
nonetheless
No.
yours. It's
And the
just
thing
not
that I
considered
own is my
property.
legacy
No,
because I'm the
no,
person who did this
No.
thing.
No, what
Precisely.
you're like, man's mind is a scarce resource. There is no such thing as a
No, but
post-scarcity
we're
world.
not
It
reducing that.
cannot
That doesn't
exist.
go anywhere.
Right.
That doesn't
Yeah,
go anywhere.
in fact, in this
Listen,
society,
in the-
man
in
would
the-
have more time to use his mind to do things because he wouldn't need to be working 9 to 5 every day.
No,
How
not
many
with AI
people? How
art.
many brilliant fucking?
That's
Aren't
not
you
what we're
tired
talking about.
of
That's
rich
not-
fucks? Hold on. Aren't you tired of rich fucks having rich fuck kids who then go to rich fuck colleges to produce results? Wouldn't it be nice if we could take advantage of the millions and billions of brilliant minds that we will never know their accomplishments because they die of fucking poverty. They starve to death. They die in adverse conditions.
You're
If
missing the
their
ad
needs
campaign.
met,
It would not be
wouldn't
nice.
it
No,
not
it would be
be
horrible.
more
They're not-
It would
they're
be
not
horrible.
saying you get
Many
It would be
brilliant
horrible
people
because
are
because
dying
you're
on
talking
factory
about,
floors
no,
today.
It's no, it'd
Okay,
be
there's no
horrible
reason-
because you're talking about
there is no
stealing
reason-
from
or
me.
like,
You're talking
80
about
pounds,
stealing.
20 years old.
Hey.
Fucking
Okay.
communists.
I don't
Fuck.
see. Okay, so well, in this conversation, I don't
Where's
see why we
McCarthy
have
when you
to.
need him?
We were talking about. Oh boy, we were talking about that ad campaign, and just like analyzing it and like why it exists and all that. I don't see why Alu or Juby necessarily have to own this ad campaign. But obviously, you can't own anything. We've established that. But like, you don't have to own this. So Alu, you're talking about a post-scarcity society. You should build that out rather than like relying on this article. I'm not sure if you got to read this article, but this article is like, it's not like Jay Chow's been trying to tell us many times before. It's not designing a utopia. I don't think that's what the author was trying to do. It's not a dystopia. It's simply like a collection of trends that this person is foreseeing. Right? That's
but
what
look at
that
the ad
appears
campaign.
to be. So like,
Look
if
at
you're
their
gonna
ad
try-
campaign.
well,
Look at
second,
that prediction.
Electrode,
But
I'll
you
get
have to look at what would make that foreseeable
Ali,
future.
Look at the ad
Yeah,
campaign.
Alu. So if you want to argue against Scott about a post-scarcity society, build that out. Don't rely on this, because he's just going to refer back to the refer back to this article, and then you're going to have to defend those points that you didn't even make. So
Right, well,
consider
well,
that.
well,
I'm glad you stepped in because they're getting crushed so bad.
Wait,
possible to
the
make
ad
an agreement
campaign's
regardless.
different. Hold on,
Wait,
the
no.
ad campaign is different than the story though, in a critical way, and that I think kind of emphasizes the intention here of the people who worked on this, is that they don't say you're going to be given everything for free. They say you'll own nothing and that you'll be happy and that you'll rent everything that you want.
Yeah.
when you're renting
Look at the
shit,
context.
that implies that you're like paying money for it, right? Or working a wage job or something, doesn't it? Like why did they use the word rent?
Maybe it's not as
because-
communist as you guys thought it was.
I think
No,
it's
no.
rent as in time, not rent as in
Yeah,
money.
exactly.
Like,
What
Exactly.
they're talking
I'll
about,
rent
what they're
everything I need in
no.
time.
No,
Yes,
no,
it
I
is
think they're
literally
saying,
So
what
I,
they're saying- what they're
so
saying-
one article.
no, what they're
One
saying.
one example.
you have
One
like-
example that the article
what
gives.
they'll
One
say-
example that the article gives.
What
So
they'll
if you want
say-
to
what
cook for
they're
yourself,
saying,
if you want to make
who's
pasta, for
letting this
example,
fucking
if you wanna-
fascist,
please,
like,
if you want to make
like,
pasta, for
I've
example,
read the fucking
it doesn't make
article.
sense to own your own personal pasta like strainer and keep that shoved in a cabinet somewhere. Just say, hey, I want to make pasta today. So go on your app, say, hey, I need a pasta strainer, and they'll send you a fucking pasta strainer the same day.
What they're
so
saying-
you can do
what
it.
they're
And then when you're done
saying-
with
what
it,
they're saying-
it's rather than shoving it in a cabinet somewhere, you send it back.
yeah, you don't.
So
own it.
somebody
what
else
they're
can use it.
saying,
You're
what they're
basically
saying
borrowing
is that
it.
the world is headed in a
What about
direction
sex toys?
because
Would
of
you share
bec-
that?
no. This is
Absolutely.
this is a vision, right? That the world is headed in a direction because of population overgrowth, Malthusian death cultists, right? And because of climate change, that what is necessary is for you to give up ownership of private property and the ability to have your home and all of these things. And we're going to usher in this new future that has some downsides, but it'll be okay because us, the leaders in the government, are going to work towards a world where all of your material conditions will be met. And instead of owning things like you want to, you'll have the phone app and you'll just be able to get all of the things. So trust us as the stewards into this new world to impose the regulations and the slavery on you, but it will be a happy slavery because all of your needs that we deem that you need will be met.
I think
God,
we're
you're
having
so
an
wrong.
ideological. Hold on.
You're
I think we're
so
having an
wrong.
ideological conversation instead of a practical one. When this really is a practical one, right? Do you think it is impossible? And just please, a short answer to this. Do you think it is impossible to have industry advance to such a point where you can distribute goods on a more horizontal basis, such as Doobie is talking, where you push a button and thing appears, and when I'm done with it, I push a button and it disappears and leaves a large quantity of said good in the air to be possessed by individuals who have need of said good? Do you think that is empirically impossible with the economics of today, or moving forward?
So do I think it's impossible that technology will improve and things can get cheaper? Under capitalism, yeah.
No, but I'm asking you cheaper to a point where distribution is not the loss leader here. Because
I mean,
in any industry,
it'll never be zero.
distribution is the most expensive
never
part
be
of any
zero.
operation. It'll never be zero, but it doesn't have to be zero to be what Doobie is advocating for. It just has to be efficient enough that the transportation cost and the infrastructure that facilitates the transportation cost is good enough for good A to get to good B without necessarily the amount of capital that's required for an entity to be justified in owning it. We allow corporations to
No.
own things because we believe, and it is a bet, that they will get goods to where they need to go efficiently. That's the
Scott's
only
not
reason
gonna
we
agree
do
with
it.
My answer to that question
Scott's
is
not
no,
gonna
that's an
agree with that at
impossibility.
all.
No, it's an
Well,
impossibility.
there is no corporation without the state. So me and Scott are always going to disagree on that. That's fine. That's a different
No, no, no.
conversation.
No, I don't
We
think
let
Scott's going to
people
agree.
own
I think,
things?
well, Scott, like, let me not put words in your mouth, but like, as I understand it, like, you feel like owning property is like a fundamental right.
It is a fundamental
and-
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fundamental or natural?
both.
Natural, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So to say that it's simply a matter of cost, right? Because what you're saying is that, like, in the model that you are designing, right, or at least if you're going off this article and that one, and that the cost of distribution, right, is just so low, and like both in terms of money and in terms of time, to receive the product, it's just so low that it just simply makes sense to like rent it, right? Like, what's the point of owning it? You'll incur more costs in your maintenance of it than you will in simply just waiting to being delivered to you.
So what I would say
like,
is, yeah.
Scott disagrees. Well, Scott believes.
Let me say what I believe.
Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Right. You own yourself. You have a right of self-autonomy, right? Owning property is because you own yourself. It's not because you necessarily own the property. It's because your time, your labor, right, is mixed in with it and cannot be separated unless you choose to voluntarily relinquish it, right? So the idea, it doesn't matter how cheap it is to distribute goods from point A to point B, there will never be a situation where it makes sense for no one to not own something, right? Like, yeah, plenty of people may choose that, like, you know, to no longer own a car because they would prefer Uber, but somebody owns the car, right? Somebody owns the means of transportation. Just because technology gets better and at being able to distribute goods, etc., under capitalism, I might add, because under systems like, you know, the World Economic Forum wants, you know, that they don't solve the economic calculation problem. But just because, like, somebody owns it, right? And so this idea that you own nothing and that you don't even have a home and all of these things, and it's necessary, what it is talking about is climate change is going to force us to make sure that we own it, and we'll make sure you're happy, right? And like, we'll make sure that you get all the things, and our betters are going to make sure that you get all the crumbs that you want, right? But you live in a world, in an environment that we control. Because fundamentally, Davos, so we're circling all the way back around, right? I don't give a fuck that a bunch of billionaires are getting together to talk about how to solve the world's problems and to how to make themselves more money or do things towards their own values. That's great and that's awesome. The problem is that they are working with governments, and they are working with the EU, and they are working with other organizations to push behavioral nudging, which is problematic but not necessarily inherently wrong. But the force of the state to get you to agree to do things via laws and force that you yourself do not want to do.
We talk about the concept behind.
It's do not want to do yet. Like, most of this stuff is about, like, changing people's perception of things, right? So i.e., previously people weren't for gay marriage or in favor of, like, trans people or whatever. And over time, many of these platforms have actually made it against their TOS to be homophobic or transphobic or whatever it is. So this minimizes the amount that this kind of perspective is expressed on these platforms, which means fewer people, especially young people, are exposed to these things. And over time, society is nudged in the direction of less homophobia, less transphobia, which I think is a good thing. Right, so I don't think that, and in fact, when they lay all this out, right? Well, this is a kind of behavioral nudging that they do. It's not like they're saying, "Hey, you need to do this thing, or we're gonna, like, fucking shoot you." It's like, "Hey, Elon Musk, this is a bad thing. You shouldn't have people advocating for the death of trans people on your platform. So you need to stop allowing this, so that this doesn't become normalized, or normalized again because it was previously normalized."
Right. When I talked about Elon Musk, right, I'm talking specifically about, like, just yesterday when we have when we have these types of people meeting together, right? This is not a WF person, right? This is just at Davos, right? This is EU commissioner. I can't remember her fucking name right now. I'd have to look it up. There's 27.
Yeah, Von.
There's only like 4.
Von,
yeah,
like,
right. So she's saying, just so our message is clear, we have rules which have to be complied with, right? And then she talks about how amazing Twitter used to be, you know, before this, and they understood that we had a certain responsibility. But, you know, I don't have that same trust in Elon Musk. But understand, we have rules, and if you don't comply with those rules, there will be sanctions, right?
That's totally reasonable.
Right? No, it's not. What we're talking
Why
about
not?
is state actors.
These are the people. These are the state actors are the ones that control the nations in which these fucking hate groups break out. Right. So if they'd like to minimize the ability for hate groups to pop up in their nations, yeah, they have an interest in shutting down Elon Musk if he's allowing fucking hate speech on his platform. Absolutely. And that's for the benefit of their citizens. That's not slavery. They're saying, "Hey, we'd like to protect our citizens from fucking radicals and hate groups, so we don't want people to be able to radicalize each other on these platforms."
Stop advocating for the destruction of your own server, Doobie. We're trying to save it.
Look,
save you.
the reality is that there have been people radicalized on my server. Absolutely. It might have been a good thing if at the start it never existed. Discord as a platform never existed because of all the pedophilia and grooming and shit that happens on the platform. Right? So it's just true. Right? So I can accept that. I'm asking you to accept that, yes, there are instances where it makes sense to crack down on speech, to disallow speech when that speech harms society.
Frankly, if you're mad at
Doobie, isn't harmful speech. Is it the governments and the billionaires get to determine what is and isn't harmful? Maybe medical misinformation might be a problem. Maybe for years we haven't known about we have had silenced and suppressed the fact that 14 to 39-year-olds, when they get the vaccine, that they have a higher rates of myocarditis, and now we know that. But medical misinformation was suppressed.
That wasn't suppressed. That was never
The
suppressed.
fuck are you
not well
talking about?
No,
Like, we
There-
haven't
there-
banned so many fucking people off of social media for daring to talk
there
about
are
these
publications
things.
dating back to like 2021. If you check, like, it was never like I can send you the publications going back. Like, this is something we've been tracking for the longest time. You could talk about maybe YouTube suppressing it, but it was never like suppressing like medical journals. Like, we
Yeah,
know
in fact,
about
I remember
now.
this being like a
Right.
huge fucking Fox News talking point because it wasn't suppressed, because people knew about that.
Wait, like it,
And
have you
even
seen
with
the-
that being the case, the rate of people dying to this thing is
Facebook
far less
openly admitted that they were
than would have
suppressing
died
it.
if we didn't roll out the
YouTube
fucking
Hold on,
openly
vaccines.
Jimmy.
suppressed it.
There's false support before that. Like, are you telling me that if I go on Twitter right now and I say that there are certain, just PSA, there are certain side effects to be aware of when considering taking the vaccine that may be detrimental to your health if you are within X and X health groups or demographics, that I'll be banned? Because I heavily doubt that.
Like,
I
that
think
is
you'll be
all
banned.
that. Hold on, Olive.
I think
Proof
you'll be
positive.
banned if you
That
say,
is all
well,
I said.
what?
That is
Hold on,
literally
hold on, hold
all
on,
I
hold on.
said when I got a community guideline strike on YouTube, and they said specifically that I was not allowed to disagree with the World Health Organization, who's been wrong damn near every step of the way. So yes,
and I'm not saying that you're lying, but
that
I am
is
saying
all that I said.
You said more than that. I am saying that I think you contextualize this in more than just this is something to be aware of if you are in this demographic, that there could be potentially side effects. I'm taking a guess, and I could be wrong, that you contextualize this to a degree because of your ideology. And I'm not saying that's bad or good, but I am saying that that is more than just saying you should be aware of this. I'm betting you right now, and I'll put $50 on this, that if I go onto Twitter right now and I put the words, for those who are within this demographic, please be aware that there are certain side effects that you should take into consideration when contemplating getting the whatever vaccine, that I will not be banned.
Probably
Or
doesn't
even-
work out because
it's
Elon
wonderful.
Musk is
It's
the
wonderful
owner
for
of
two.
Twitter.
It's
and
it's
he's been
wonderful for
unbanning people who have done
it's
that.
beautiful.
I'm kind of backing up a little bit here. So like, I think
Notice he
I'm not
said
sure
Twitter.
if you ever done content creation, but I can say that as a content creator that these platforms don't care about context. Right, like when they are making these decisions, it's not as if a person sits there and like thinks really hard about the context of whatever Scott was saying, right? And I'll take him face value at his word, like in terms of how he presented it. Like, it's not someone is sitting there and taking a bit of time to consider this. One, it's automated. If it's reported, it's a problem just in itself. It's just the AI decides it's an issue, and then Scott has to elevate it to the point that someone actually reviews it, if that ever happens. And
Yeah, it doesn't
usually,
happen.
to get these things reviewed, you just have to have like a whole bunch of publicity on it. So,
Or like 100K subscribers.
It seems to me that like for Scott, again, just taking him at his word, right? You might be right about how he phrased it, but like just taking him at his word, that it could be the case that he presented it just as he did, and YouTube just like, well, fuck you, you didn't follow our guidelines, and that's all there is. They do that all the time for all kinds of reasons.
And it
Is it
specifically
the company
states
doing it,
you're
or is
not
it
allowed.
the World Health Organization doing it? No,
Well,
it's YouTube that's doing it. It's Twitter. It's
YouTube is-
private companies that are doing it. So like you put a lot of faith in private
hold
companies
on,
to do
hold on.
for the benefit
Calling-
of the
calling-
people, but then like
calling
right here you're
YouTube
complaining
a
about
private
the free
company.
speech mispractices, at least that what you believe in, that's being done by these private companies.
Calling
Like maybe your
YouTube
faith in
a-
private companies are just misplaced, my dude.
calling YouTube a private company when it is very clear that we have issues with lower court's interpretation of Section 230, and they have protections afforded to them by the state. And of course, our same judicial system
Why does that conflict? Why does that conflict?
picks and chooses which social media platforms that it wants to work with. Oh, and by the way, we have, seen so much from the Twitter files that, we haven't seen the YouTube files, but we can very
can't
clearly
tell
say
if you're-
Twitter
Hold on,
was not
Before-
a private
no, no, no,
company.
I want to get into
Not
that.
when
I want to
they're
get into
receiving
that. I want to
millions
understand
of
what you think.
dollars from.
I want to
Not when they're
understand.
receiving millions of dollars from the FBI and the State Department and other things like that to intentionally allow PSYOP accounts to be given secret blue check marks so that they can use campaigns to convince people that actually the drone strikes Americans did weren't that bad and nobody innocent died. Right?
No. I have severe problems with that entire statement. All right, first off, your last statement about blue check marks. Was it not you who, I don't know how long ago, was arguing that corporate entities should not be allowed to integrate with foreign entities who we are in some sort of economic, ideological, or socioeconomic rivalry
No,
with?
that's
It
probably
was.
Lactoid.
It absolutely
It wasn't me.
was. It
No, it
was
literally
you.
wasn't.
You were arguing
it
that
literally
China was
wasn't.
a national security interest in the case of Ford, and now you are arguing that it is
I
inappropriate
literally never said that.
State government or
Alu,
other
that was
officials
Lactoid.
to.
Alu,
That was
like
Lactoid.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Scott.
Okay.
Scott always yells at me. But I gotta defend him here. That was Lactoid, not
My
Scott.
mistake. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
Lactoid's a
Yeah,
fucking
Scott was
idiot.
just complaining about
Lactoid.
subsidies, and he was just complaining about subsidies, and the state is bad. Governments should go drown in a pool, and I love my anarchist utopia.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, I think the
Okay,
idea that like you guys are
my
complaining about.
other issue
go
is
ahead,
that, I'll make it short too. My other issue is that in terms of, so in your mind is subsidy what, like, I don't understand the contradiction here. Does subsidizing certain industries in certain ways make them not private property?
When you taxation is theft, right? When you intentionally engage in reducing special taxation for certain companies, what you do is destroy the ability of the market to be able to effectively distribute goods and commodities, etc., because you're saying you're giving special privileges to one company while stealing from the other companies. The problem is the taxation, right? That's the problem. It's theft of private property.
I think this is silly, but do we go ahead?
Well, I was going to say, I think that the fact that you guys are complaining about algorithms and people being like banned or striked over COVID misinformation, and maybe it wasn't COVID misinformation, maybe they don't care about context, whatever.
Sorry.
I think the fact that you guys are complaining about that, I think is reasonable from your perspective, but from the perspective of these platforms, right? Like YouTube has like 700,000 hours of shit uploaded onto it every day. Discord, like I think it's like almost 1 billion messages every fucking day, right? I think it makes sense for most of this to be done with algorithms if they want it to be done at all. And yeah, sometimes shit's gonna slip through the cracks. They're gonna over-enforce or under-enforce, and that's just the reality of the scale that we're dealing with, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I think it makes sense for them to prioritize shutting down.
That's a straw man.
People that are like what's the word I'm looking for? Skeptical of like vaccines and shit like this. It makes sense to lean more heavily on that side because that's what all the medical experts are saying. That's what all these organizations dedicated to fixing this issue are saying, and it saved millions of lives. Right. So if you got a strike over this, I'm sorry. I mean, it makes sense. You deserve the strike.
It did. No, it doesn't, right? Like, I understand that you're not in favor of free speech. I understand that you've been in favor of fascism this entire time.
Virtue signaling.
No, I mean, sometimes it's important to call fascists out. Nevertheless,
what makes this fascistic?
The marriage of the corporation and the state, and why it's a beautiful thing that corporations and states work together to impose their will and engage in behavioral
to save lives.
Citizens.
Scott, I bet you everything that has to do with the state
to save millions of lives.
Yes. If you were a structuralist or a consequentialist, because at the end of the day, no matter what argument we have, the fact that the consequences of said action matter less to you than the form of how you get to X result, there's always going to be a divide here. At the end of the day, what Doobie is saying to you is that if it provides better results for people, if more people are happy as a result of this mechanism, then that is inherently a good thing. You still have new problems and new things to work on. That's a granted, right? But regardless, he's saying this results in maybe better conditions for your average person, and maybe that's good. And there's no point where that's going to be a meritable argument to you because you don't care about the result. You care about how you get there.
No. The reason that's not a valid argument is because what you have done by saying the ends justify the mean is established a moral norm that the state is justified in theft and enslaving people so long as the state believes that the future outcomes will be good for the material conditions, slavery is justified. I'm saying slavery is not
crazy argument,
justifiable.
and you're going to call me a fascist. I'm going to predict this right now. I'm going to make an argument, and you're going to call me a fascist.
Well, if you say something fascistic, I might.
Okay, fair enough. If
You know what I mean? Like,
if we get this society that we're talking about right now, and it provides a better result for humanity as a whole, and it is correct in your statement that it is a form of slavery, I support it. Straight up, I support
right,
it.
you support slavery.
I support this slavery if
So-
it does indeed promote better good for more people in a very empirical way.
So let me ask you a quick
support
question,
it.
Alu.
Alu,
Let me ask you a quick
don't-
question,
don't
Alu.
do this.
No. Let me
You
ask you a
shouldn't
quick
have
question. No.
done that.
Let
Ali,
me
that's
ask you a
bad
quick
idea.
question. I'll be real quick, right? So it is a known fact, right, that at the turn of the Civil War, right, as the American North was industrializing, that the health outcomes of slaves in the South were better, that they had better had better health, they had more children. We don't know how happy they were because we didn't have general satisfaction with life surveys, right? But they were less likely to be destitute. They were less likely to not have their material conditions met. And so what you're saying is that we actually should have kept the Southern institution of black slaves, picking them cotton, because up in the North, they were, their material conditions were not as good, right? So it's a happy form of slavery that we can accept.
No, it's a silly argument
Never
because
mind
the
the
descendants are far happier
problems.
than their ancestors ever were. Their ancestors have the ability to be doctors and pharmacists and lawyers and anything they goddamn want to be as far as reason
Okay, so
goes. Regardless from that, right? Even then, are the landowners who have these slaves being more lenient with their slaves than their northern counterparts because they were just really good dudes, or were they doing that because they were afraid of slave rebellion in a time of war?
Alu, you he's already won this here. Like,
How?
he's talking about. First of all, look, you can't
It's
say
just bad
that.
optics.
Oh well, in the future, right? The slave descendants, right, are even happier, and so in the past we should have known this, and then not gotten rid of that system, right? So we.
You don't
can't do
think that there were
And
people
then-
making
and then-
arguments?
And then separately, you could say that you can create a system of slavery, and I'm sure we could consider this, right? Like that, in which a small amount of people work really fucking hard for the rest of us, and it raises our standard of living. And in that case, you would have to be, according to you,
It's America.
you'd have to be in favor of it, right? And Corey, I see your hand. You'd have to be in favor of it, correct?
I could make the argument
Uh-oh.
in devil's advocate, right, that in order for 95% of the global population to be living in material conditions that are above the floor of their needs, and to have 5% working to further those needs, that could be realistically
Involuntarily.
slavery, could be moral.
Okay,
You could
well
make that
all right.
argument.
Then okay.
You bit the bullet.
I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing. I'm not even arguing
This
the
is a
point.
true
I'm
lefty
saying
here,
that you
man.
could make that
He's
argument.
honest.
There's
It
nothing
would-
else
No,
to
not
say
true
to
lefty,
that.
true
argument
utilitarian. No,
True
no.
honest
But
lefty.
let me
No.
explain
What the
this.
fuck?
The existence of that argument and the fact that you can make that argument and still be consistent and viable and competitive goes against the objective and inherent argument he is making here.
I look, we got it. Like Scott's got a smug smile on his face, and you put it there, and that's something that pisses
Yeah,
me off.
that's a
too.
slavery.
Put a smug smile on Scott's face. Not
Wait. I
But he's
got
just-
one more bullet.
He's
I got
right,
one
though.
more
I don't
bullet.
need to
know why
follow
you guys
up.
are.
You know?
Wait, I got one more
Fucking
bullet that I want to
pro-slavery.
So let's say I showed you a study that showed that back in 1850 or whatever, it was only 13% that was slaves, and the rest of the population was very psychologically satisfied and dominating these people, and it led them to be very happy. That in of itself, would you be in favor of it then? It's did that increase total well-being to an extent that you'd be happy with that?
Repeat the question one more time, but I'm sorry.
Okay, so we agree that a minority of people were slaves before the Civil War, right?
hmm
Yeah, if the majority gained psychological satisfaction that was great, very very good.
The white
They
people.
were, yeah, the white people. The white people were really happy owning people, and
It's
in fact,
maximal flourishing.
maximal flourishing. Their overall happiness and satisfaction that comes with owning people was greater than the suffering of the 13%, because of course there's more white people. Like, would that be independent justification for slavery?
Wasn't
Should be
even
a very
13%
easy
at the
question.
time. It was
So-
like 6%.
No, because
Not even
again,
that
this
in
is
the
a different
South.
dynamic. The dynamic that we're giving with the WEC isn't that there should always be an outgroup and always an in-group. It's that this is a methodology of massively increasing the in-group. And ideally, you keep going with that and continue to reduce the outgroup into the in-group. Your hypothetical says, well, there's an outgroup and an in-group, and the in-group is very happy. Does that justify the outgroup? It justifies the outgroup only if you're catering to the whims of the in-group. And to my mind, you would only solely cater to the goals of the in-group if the outgroup was completely incapable of integrating into the in-group, which wasn't the case with the Civil War. Very clearly, black people in America had something to contribute and were also
No, you're
capable of
missing.
So,
completely
You've already
able.
missed
Let me
it.
make-
What I'm saying is
hold on.
that the
What did I
lack
miss?
of
Let me make my
integration
final
from the
statement.
outgroup, the lack of integration from the outgroup to the in-group, like led
Is-
to better outcomes for the in-group.
it's-
That's my question to you.
It's almost 12:30. I got to get out of here. I will
Thank
make
God.
this
Let's
at
get a
the
yes.
end.
Let's get a yes from him.
It was so amazing, right? That at the I'm not going to get a better highlight, right, than to get everyone to, or at least Alu, to admit that it is happy slavery that the World Economic Forum is using your states and governments to come towards. But it's okay because it's happy slavery.
It's a rhetorical win, though.
So-
like it's
and
not
so
a substantive win.
and
You're
so-
not arguing my
right,
point.
and
You're just
so-
saying he
and
said the
so-
words
and
slavery could actually be good.
Go. Okay, so there's one problem with the argument that he is making, which is that it is not about expanding the in group. It is actually about expanding the out group. And the reason is because everyone is a slave under this system. It's just that they're a happy slave because their material conditions are met, but no man, right, except for whatever amorphous group at the very top, right, who has the right lineage, right, the lords, if you will, right, or maybe the person that is voted by a majority, right, has the ability to shape his environment, gain property, use those resources to shape the world in the vision that he sees. Instead, he can create things, but he doesn't own anything. He can grab things, but he can't own anything. So we're all happy slaves, presumably, except none of us have the freedom to engage in our will and individual action to shape our environment as man is destined to do.
What I'm saying to you, what I'm saying to you is very
Leave
different.
it alone. Okay, Scott, stick around. I'll wrap it up. I want to get Corey the last word on this. And then,
All right, I'll stick around if it's just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'll leave it there then, because my question is to Scott, and it's probably not going to take more than a couple of minutes. So I'll leave it there.
Give us another lecture. We'll be here for another hour.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for this. It's escalated, but in a fun way. In a debate bro way, the best way. So, thank you all for being here. To my audience, guys, if you enjoyed this conversation, and this was a lot of fun, in my opinion, hit that follow button. If you just just stop by, hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on. I do this all the time. We'd love to have you. So stick around. We're going to have an open walk-on panel after this. We're not done. We have more content for you. So stick around for that. Okay. We are, and also the last thing is, guys, if you support this content, if you like what we're doing, then help us out, right? It's a huge help when you sub to this channel, when you give bits, give subs, or use our PayPal button. We do have a PayPal button. Whenever your money gets to us, we use PayPal, so consider using that. Expect for donating chat for that, in case you don't know. But yeah, consider assisting the channel. We literally can't do it without you. So shout out to the people who do support, because this is how it can bring these individuals together. We can have all these fun topics, right? And we can agree, all of us unanimously, that slavery is good. So I'm going to give an outro to these individuals, but stick around, please, because we do have more content for you after that. Okay, let's go to our friend Oh my God, Alu, I don't know what you're doing. But like, consider using the stop cam, like the stop cam function, rather than moving your
Be
camera. Or
easier
whatever.
than that, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a huge distraction when you do that to everyone else.
I'm getting a
But,
light
like,
show.
It's like a
My
whole light
mistake.
show when you do that. Yeah.
My
So
mistake.
I'm not someone who does like the stream thing, so I appreciate
no
it.
problem. No problem. You're brand new. Lactoid. Thank you for coming. And all of this. Lactoid. If I can get you to stick around again, if you keep saying interesting things, I would love to pick your brain. Your ideas about sex. It's a bottomless pit of of entertainment. We'll call it. So yes, buddy, please. Thank you for being around.
Yeah, so I just wanted to take my conclusion to just say some interesting things that I genuinely believe. I do think that, like in the very beginning, we talked about. I think sex work is predatory, and I'd love to have a conversation about it sometime. I think when you really drill down in it, most people will agree. Also, China, communist dictatorships are bad. We generally shouldn't give money to them. And also, governments controlling our speech is also probably not the best thing. So, those are all generally things that I would be in opposition to. Very difficult bolts to bite. Oh, and slavery's bad too. I want to throw that on there as well. If you liked what I had to say, you could find me at Anti-Communism United on Discord, YouTube, and Twitch, or Anti-Com United, or ACU now on Twitter. Thank you for inviting me on Prime. Thank you everyone who talked to me.
Yeah, no problem. So in lactose plan, slavery is bad, but racial discrimination is it's acceptable.
Can I say one more thing real quick? If you guys were actually wanting to like ban like dangerous misinformation, if that was actually a policy, any like leftism would just be eradicated from the internet. So be careful what you wish for, because if you convince me on that, we're gonna get pretty fucking bad pretty quick. So
to quote Antifa, liberals get the bullet too.
Fair enough. Okay.
Is that on their Twitter account?
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense. Anyway, Scott. Scott.
I fucking hate you.
Scott, thank you for coming through. This is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun listening to you guys. I didn't have to say, I barely say anything because all of you guys were just so incredibly engaged. Like you definitely didn't need me. But thank you, Scott, for being here. And I'm sorry, I apologize to your doctor for getting your blood pressure up because we definitely did that today. Scott, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. I kind of already made an outro on the last topic, and I usually don't do outros on like the previous topics. It's a sign of a bad argument when you have to like wrap it up at the end. No offense, Lactoid. I just know that's your habit. But yeah, so I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, pretty much everywhere, Fabian Liberty. Tomorrow we'll be interviewing Stefan Kinsella, who is an expert on IP lawyer. He is the individual that really kind of solidified how we use estoppel principle in libertarian natural law philosophy, and a big thought leader in libertarianism, and not a fan of argumentation ethics. So who knows what we'll talk about. And then Wednesday, we'll chat with Zonia and stuff like that. So you never know what kind of crazy, super nerdy, esoteric shit we might get into, or just memes and degeneracy. So definitely come check us out.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to Jay Chow. Jay Chow, this time we managed to stick on topic, right?
Congratulations.
Doesn't mean it was any less explosive. I know, right? But doesn't mean it was any less explosive. But you stuck with it, and I think you did a great job. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Jay Chow. I completely disagree with Prime. We went all over the place on all the topics, but I'll say my three things. Pussy is salty. Chinese batteries are not a national security threat. And the not owning anything and renting everything is a prediction. It's not a policy. And it was lobbying Facebook likes.
Can you explain what you mean by salty? Like, what are you...
Okay, like, it could be... It's like a combination of salty and sour.
But, like...
The vagina was
Have you
set
never
for?
gone down on somebody?
What about
I
fish?
Do you
feel
mean
like- I feel like-
rind? Do you mean like
Different flavor.
Okay.
a patch head? Like
Remember the
maybe there
40-year-old
are
version
different-
where he
okay,
used to
there
sell that
probably
boots full
are
like
different
Sam?
flavors.
I feel like we're having one of those moments.
It's like
All right.
like raw
I
oysters.
feel like pussy's only salty after another man is done using it. But let's move on.
What, from semen?
Let's go. Our friend Doobie. I love the look of Scott's face.
Yo,
Oh,
Prime,
the
you know what
self
semen tastes like?
the self-reports, man.
Doobie. Oh God.
The self-report of going down on somebody and having oral sex. You guys
Oh my
you guys
God.
are like
That's a
high schoolers.
self-report.
Oh
Dude,
my
I
god!
just think you're. I just think your girl
lick
should
a
have
vagina?
policies, bro.
Oh my
Like,
god!
that's
you lick a
really my sole
vagina?
concern
Like,
here.
did you
Okay.
guys not take health class in middle school or something?
Gobbling up fucking mucus and piss. Disgusting.
What is
Mucus
her
comes
diet?
out of vagina.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe
Definitely.
for maybe for frogs.
Oh no. The vagina is a mucus membrane. Like inside the vagina, that's a mucus membrane. That's like a definition.
Mucus, piss,
Yeah,
and
when I-
dead
mucus
skin cells,
membrane.
okay?
Like the mucus from
If
the
you're
throat.
lucky. God knows
Maybe
what
a
else
different
is in there.
mucus.
Doobie, you're right. We
Mucus
got
is
If
Yeah,
she
yeah,
was
yeah,
salty,
values.
like
Yo,
so,
do you
there's
guys
something
know
else in there.
how
that,
much
you know,
nutrients are in semen?
Mucus
God.
is a general.
Let me
I
tell
believe
you.
just said that.
What are you talking about
It's
right
gonna
now?
be the World Economic
Oh my
Forum's next
God.
big
Well,
diet
because
plan.
did you like gobble semen out of your girlfriend's vagina? Is like that? Is that what you? Is that why you was salty?
This is what the
Is
World
how
Is that
Economic
what
many
you're
Forum
talking
is
about?
gonna be
Nutritional
talking
values?
about next,
as a
and
result
they're
of
gonna
this?
be pushing all the ad campaigns, and Lacto's gonna be like, "This is the fucking ideology they're forcing onto our societies without our consent."
Okay.
Yo,
They were
actually,
pushing for
that's a
that?
good question. Lactoid, is it dominant for you to suck
got it.
semen out of your girlfriend's vagina in order to get AP as fuck? Is that dominant or is that submissive?
It's like she took a part of you and you're pulling it back.
Let's. Okay. Wow.
Right,
okay.
but okay, so
Let's
Going
hey,
forward.
we have
Let me-
open
let me-
panel. We have an open panel. We have an open panel. I'm trying to tap Lactoid to join him. You can ask him that question there. Okay. Doobie, Dark Lord and Savior. Thank you for being here. Thank you for providing our newest person, Alo. This became a lot more entertaining than I thought. So thank you, friend. We learned a lot about a lot of people here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord. Discord.gg/politics. We've got an AMA with Destiny coming up on the 4th, and then an AMA with Armchair Historian on the 11th. Be pretty interesting. Yeah, we're the biggest and best political server on Discord. Alu is from there. You guys always say that, oh, Doobie's server's full of Nazis and morons. As you can see, Alu is not a Nazi. He's not a moron. Incredibly intelligent guy. There are lots of people like him on the server. Not as good as him, but pretty good.
Okay, thank you so much. Corey, thank you for seeing we need a modicum of respectability here, right? And you sitting there calm like an adult above it all. That's all that we have, honestly, right? Your maturity is always appreciated, friend. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, always grateful to be here. Despite I fully recognize I probably didn't engage as much in the panel as I would have wanted to, just because, I'm not a real man, I'm not a debate bro enough, and so I just let things play out. Apparently, I will sort of incite the debate bro tactics, which I guess that works out for the better. But yeah, always great to be here. So I'm Corey Campbell. I'm a radical leftist, but I still don't support slavery. Although arguably I do support taxation, so some people might say I do support slavery, but I don't. But yeah, I'm Corey Campbell. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, Corey Campbell 84. I do cover science, I cover news, and if you want to watch someone that doesn't consume animal products and you want to see protein deficiency and degeneracy in real time, I also do workout streams, so you can pass by for that. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Literally, it's Corey Campbell. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And finally, Alu, our newest addition. I thought you did great. Yeah, I think you did a fantastic job. I loved
Your first foray, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. You did a great job engaging. And I had no problem drawing European out of you, right? So you were fantastic. I hope you come back in the future. We'd love to talk to you some more.
Yeah, it's fun. Just to put it out there, Doobie's server, I'm gonna add him right now. It's a psyop, okay? It's run by federal agents, and they're afraid of me. and that's why they have detained me several times because they're,
Sure.
again, I just want to make it sure that everyone who watching knows Doobie's an objectively bad person, and beware him.
Absolutely.
The world knows that. Exclamation point Doobie though in chat. For the
Cancel
prophecy
Doobie, bro. Cancel Doobie.
Many people have tried and they have literally all failed.
Guys,
That's
it's
just
so
me really
personal.
quickly.
You keep on platforming this guy.
Okay.
Little known fact, just really quickly. Aloe and I are actually like semi snow brothers. And like
True. Oh,
Yeah,
we're
it's really
going.
Pause.
Okay.
Hold on, pause. Semi? Is that what happens when
Semi.
Alu tastes
That's
salt when he's
pussy.
going down
It's
on a girl
complicated.
that you wouldn't eat out?
no, Kate, no. Semi as in like I never actually hooked up with a girl, but we like messed around online and she tried to get me to hook up with her and he actually did. And it was a great experience for everyone.
We're quasi snow. What is it? Eskimos.
Yeah.
Eskimo brothers.
Eskimo brothers.
We're like we have like igloos set like right next to each other basically.
Parasocial hoenomics.
One person used
Sure.
her pussy, and then the separate
Yeah,
occasion,
I
one
lose
person used her
high-rise
ass.
igloo
But
that
like,
he's on
okay,
right now.
fair enough. Guys, check out Doobie's server. You know they'll have that Destiny thing, the debate. Not sorry. What's it called? AMA. Yeah, it's gonna be great. He does all kinds of fantastic stuff, and he has people like Alu there. So you will be entertained. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, all of you, for all of that. This is a hell of a day, and I'm so grateful, seriously, to each and every one of you who keeps coming back here and like doing this with me. This makes my day, having these conversations. All right, we are going to go into our open walk-on panel right after this. Anyone here can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion in my community. I know they appreciate you so much as I do. Thank you so much. Back to it. Get in the fucking 1,000 Sunny. I want to talk to you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Always a
Peace.
pleasure.
See ya.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.